Hello and welcome to the 2023 Fantasy Wildcard Charity Streamathon. This is our number 5, I presume. We are stream number 2. I'm your host, Ali. You can follow me on Twitter at FF Dynasty Grill. With me as always is my amazing co-host, Matt. You can follow on Twitter at MattFF Dynasty. Matt, how are you doing entering our number 5?
Yeah, so we're into the second quarter, I guess you could say, of this streamathon. It's been great. The first 4 hours have flown by for me. It's been a lot of fun, but as you mentioned, we've still got plenty of time to go yet. We've got 2 amazing guests on with us to kick things off on this second stream. This is always one of my favorite parts of the streamathon when we get these 2 guys on, because you can just sit back and relax and enjoy it, Ali. It's going to be a lot of fun for us 2 as hosts, but as I say, the guests are going to be amazing. And yeah, it's been a great day so far, and I'm looking forward to it.
Indeed. Before we welcome on our amazing co-host here, we're going to just talk about the streamathon. So we're 16 hours, 4 stream. This is number 2 of 4, 32 teams we were talking about, discussing every NFL franchise from a dynasty perspective. And of course, we're doing it all for raising funds for a fantastic charity in mind, who are very, very close to our hearts. The fantastic charity supporting people with mental health issues and facilitating improvement to their mental health. The Fantasy Wildcard team wants to help support this amazing charity, and we'd be delighted if you could too. So to do this, all you got to do is check out our link tree on our Twitter page at Fantasy Wildcard. The website can also be seen on our banner at the bottom of this stream. So it's justgiving.com/page/Fantasy Wildcard 2023. And again, thank you very much for your support. So yeah, we're going to kick off stream number 2 with 2 amazing guests we're going to bring on here that was such a good fun last year. Here they are. We're going to be talking about the NFC North. So we talk about the Vikings and the Bears. So 2 really interesting teams from a dynasty perspective. From a tale of 2 rivals, we welcome back Dave and Todd. Guys, how you doing? Well, it'll be this morning for you 2.
We're doing great. I mean, you said this is going to be fun for everyone.
Why are you speaking for me? Why are you speaking for me?
Yeah,
there's no we in this. I have to myself.
Spend time with Todd. This is terrible. So no.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what garbage comes out of your mouth, dude.
I think the last time we recorded together was the streamathon last year, which was by design.
Yeah. Actually, because I actually wanted to speak to that, is that like I feel like Dave and I very much practice our own mental health. You know, like I feel like we're balancing our lives with a lot of things going on, being fathers of young kids, and that's important. And adding Dave into my life while I have all that going on was just too much. So
facts are tough for Todd.
Huh?
Facts are tough for Todd. You know, he wants to go with his gut all the time.
So like, long story short, is we on a little hiatus, but we're gonna kick it back off at some point soon. But I do miss his face sometimes. But yeah, today I'm excited to get talking about these. I love the teams you guys picked for us too. They're gonna be fun to talk about.
See, the streamathon, it doesn't just bring great content in terms of dynasty knowledge and obviously raising awareness for mind. It brings people together. It brings people back from the seas that parted. Then we bring them back together as well. We do it all here on this streamathon. So yeah, it's going to be good.
I'm just happy to be back after what happened with Elijah Moore last year. That's what I'm saying.
We're giving you one final chance, Dave. This is it. This is your chance.
And this, just in terms of me and Matt, it's a great therapy session for us to just sit back and hear you 2 go at it at these dynasty players and teams. So yeah, without further ado, we're going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings, a team that showed really great things last year. And yeah, we could talk about them. So over to you, Matt, for your question about the quarterback position.
Yeah, so the quarterback, obviously Kirk Cousins, and for me, he feels like one of the most underrated quarterbacks in all of fantasy football for the last few years. A guy that nobody really gets excited about, but year after year, he gives us some really solid production for fantasy. Just looking back to last year, finishes the QB7 in 2022, and I think the thing that's obviously helped that is the change in philosophy for the Vikings. They've now become a much more pass-heavy offense in the recent years. I think in terms of dynasty, the one thing now that I feel like holds people back is maybe the age, obviously 34 years old, coming into a contract year this year. So I just want to know, guys, where do you sit with Kirk Cousins? He's currently at the QB 22 ADP on Keep Trade Cut right now. What are you doing with him in Dynasty at that price point? Are you happy to buy? You may be looking to move off him, given that he's now getting up there in age and entering a really critical year in terms of his potential future in the NFL.
Todd, you want this to start her off, or what? You want me to do this? I guess I'm going to do it because Todd's on mute. So
I actually want Dave to start off, because what I was saying is that Dave is horrendous at evaluating quarterbacks. So I'd rather people remember the good evaluation at the second part. So go ahead, Dave.
Gotta love AI. It's automatically muting Todd before he says more mistakes. So when I hear this question, honestly, I think this is the question for the Minnesota Vikings. For me, we could this question could relate to the entire team eval that we're doing today. But first off, I'm going to zoom out. Like you, Matt said, they were the 7th highest neutral game pass rate in the NFL last year. That was higher than even what blew out the previous 3 seasons. Kevin O'Connell now is the new coach there, so 7th in pace of play. So you're seeing that uptick in passing volume and pace. So you're going to get a lot of volume still in Minnesota, hopefully, which is exciting to me. And then the key point too was the team rushing attack. It was one of the worst you've seen with Dalvin Cook as their starter last year. So that's, I think, also why you saw some spike in passing volume. And then, as he continues to, this defense continues to age and lose talent, I think you also could see a spike in volume. So that's just overall, I think you're going to see a lot of volume in this offense. So that's zooming out from the team view. Zooming in on Cousins, his 38 pass attempts per game last year were the highest of his career. So, it's going to be tough to keep that at that level and expect it to go up, even with all these team level stats that I put out. You're going to see some kind of reversion to the mean a little bit. So, 30 more volume for him is going to be tough. So he's going to have to do it on efficiency. And it was his worst efficient season last year, no matter how you look at it. EPA per dropback, average yards per attempt, his big time throw percentage, his turnover worthy plays. It was his worst season of his career as far as that was concerned, despite the decent fantasy finish. So then what does this ultimately mean? We're going to zoom in and figure out what this means for Cousins. I think you're going to have Hawkinson for a full year. They drafted Addison in the first round, and then they've lost those pieces on defense. So I think you're going to see the volume. I just think that we've been spoiled for too long from elite QBs. The key word is elite QBs of Breeze, Brady, and Rodgers aging well. I think Matt Ryan is a typical more age arc for these quarterbacks as Cousins enters age 35. 22 price for QB 22 on Keep Trade Cut is a lot more attractive than the QB 17 price on DLF startup ADP for Superflex. So that's a little bit more tolerable. But instead, I think I'd rather, knowing these questions about his efficiency, depending on volume at this late stage of his career, despite the good weapons, I think I'd rather go with Geno Smith at price or Aaron Rodgers at price compared to Kirk Cousins.
I kind of like the idea that Dave just kind of gave like a redraft evaluation, focusing everything on this year, Dave. So my thing about him is that you're looking at a guy who's been the top 12 QB for 5 out of the last 6 seasons. That's just consistent, right? I agree, like with the 17 to 22 evaluation, no matter where you're going to go at ADP, he's in some sort of range like that. So there's discrepancy when you look at that. It becomes like really league dependent on how that team values. So you got to come up with a number that you're looking at for what you want to get Cousins and go hit up that manager, right? So this is a make or break year for him with the Vikings. He has no excuses. They just brought in Addison, So if they move on for him, he's still a QB in this league. He is a starter in this league for at least 3 more seasons. And he's going to consistently be a great QB too if you're going to be looking to go for a championship. You could honestly, in my opinion, you could stack the crap out of your team everywhere else, and he could be your QB1 for a championship. But that just means you're stacked everywhere else. You know what I mean? But there's risk in that, but that's also the reason why you become a champion. You take a risk, So I'm a big Cousin fan of price. I've been a big Cousin fan for a while, right? So I'm continued on that, and we're gonna get more into the other pieces they added in later. So at cost, I think it's great, and I would actually argue about I rather have him over Rodgers if we're talking about age and situation. And the other thing too is that like with Geno, I like Geno right now for this year, but we're also talking about a much smaller sample size to be relying on than what Cousins has put out.
Mm-hmm.
Old man Foster going the old man. Surprise, surprise.
Dave jumping on a guy at 33 years old after one good season being better.
34. Come on, 34.
Geno Smith was
Geno
awesome
Smith.
on the Jets, bro.
Look, I'm not letting go of my bad QB analysis when he came out as a rookie. Okay.
It's all good, man. I'm glad you're focusing on this year for Dynasty weeks. Good job, buddy. So.
I like to win, Todd, even though it doesn't happen very often.
And then Matt,
my Twitter profile, buddy. You know?
Matt, quickly from you, Matt. How much of a risky asset do you think Kirk Cousins is entering that contract year? Do you see, obviously, with all the wins they had last year, especially a lot of them were one-score games that all went their way. Is there a world where the Minnesota Vikings don't make the playoffs and look to move on from Cousins, and then he's in a situation where he could be going to a team with not very good weapons, etc.?
Yeah, I think there could potentially be that situation, like we mentioned when we spoke about the Giants. I feel like the Vikings were a little bit like that, kind of the imposters that crept into the playoffs. The record showed them as being one of the top teams, and then as soon as it got into the playoffs, they kind of just went out with a whimper. And I feel like that's because they did have a lot of those games that were one possession games that swung their way, where maybe it might not have done in different situations. So I feel like the record last year was maybe a bit false on what the actual team was as a whole. Obviously, we know that the weapons that Cousins has got on this offense and the additions that they've made this year as well. But I feel like there's a lot of work still to do with the Vikings in terms of them being an established one of the top teams in the NFL. So for me, he is slightly risky, but at the same time, you look at the price point and it's not really like you're making a huge investment on an aging quarterback when he's going around the QB 20 range. I feel like that's a mid-tier QB too, and the fact that you can get him and the production we've seen from him over the recent years, I'm maybe leaning more to Todd's side, but I've got to try and stay neutral in this because I feel like there's going to be a lot of back and forth. I feel like we've got to be the officiators, Ali, in this one, and we've got to play it pretty safe, not get too one-sided when it comes to the takes. But for me personally, I am slightly leaning with Todd, and I think maybe we've got a little bit more out of Kirk Cousins than maybe Dave's giving him credit for.
Look.
All right.
This is ridiculous.
1-0.
This is ridiculous.
1-0.
I used to like this. God. No, a little bit follow up on Kirk Cousins. I think if he's going to be your QB2 and you have that anchor stud QB1 in a championship contending, I'm totally cool with that. But I think you should invest a little bit more at your QB3 position if Kirk Cousins is your QB2, just because of the risk of his age and the lack of efficiency. And he was just so volume dependent. And his QB12 in points per game was 17.4 last season. That is the lowest it's been in 5 years. So it was a down year for these lower end QB1s last year. So look, I know it felt good and it was a good finish, but sometimes, we can't live in the past. We have to look to the future here, Todd.
I'm just backpedaling for you. I'm putting a interpretive stance for your take.
I was going to say, I felt like Dave was kind of trying to win his way back there with that little final analysis. So I think we better move on, Ali, before
1-0.
Yeah.
Let Todd have his
we better quickly move on. And I'm actually going to throw a little bit of an audible here because we've got Dalvin Cook to talk about. But I guess for me, it's a bit boring now because the fact that he is going to get cut by the looks of it. So a very quick question is, make a prediction on where Dalvin Cook lands. Where would he land to have the biggest effect for Dalvin Cook's value in terms of fantasy? And then the second question is, what are you doing with this backfield now that we've got Alexander Mattison? Then they've drafted a late rookie. There's a couple of pieces that are already there. So how are you approaching in Dynasty this backfield? And is it interesting for you, or do you think they're going to add to this backfield?
I'll jump in on this one because Dave's going to go on forever. So if I'm not contending, I don't know why he's already on my team at this point, right? So I hold until cut regardless, all right? New landing spot's going to create a new narrative with him, right? And it opens up a better sell window because and he needs some juice. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He's the perfect addition to those typical names we throw out there in the draft. Kansas City, Buffalo, Miami, Cincinnati, you know what I mean? Like those offenses. Like I think he lands in one of those or another one is actually we're going to talk about later. I could see him on the Bears. Like he's like a good fit for that. And I'll get into that later. But could be the missing piece for a contender in a league once he's on one of those better offenses, those elite offenses. And I'll throw out because once you create that narrative, you might be able to get a 2020 first, a 2024 first, or 2025 first from a contender if they're really, really, really RB needy. Now if you're gonna go to Dave, who's analytical, yes, it's not your market, dude. You know what I mean? But let's say you're trading to a guy like Dave, who's consistently in fourth place, trying to get to me, who's consistently in first place. They might be desperate enough to say, I got to make this move when I'm starting 3 RBs. It really depends on your league, man. And what you do is you try to sell high and then you come down. You're trying to get the highest pick you can. Be like a middle school dance. Be okay with rejection. Just don't be unrealistic. You know what I mean? Those are the things. It's you got to be able to be persistent in that situation. Just don't make awful offers. Dave went, oh my God. I'm that's not really that unrealistic for a late first for a guy who's going to be a starting running back in an elite offense. There's a narrative there where people accept that. Go ahead, Dave.
I actually agree with a lot of what Todd said.
I hate you more than anything more.
No, I think the big key thing here is that it's been too late to make the decision on Cook. Your rookie drafts are usually done. The time was to make your decision then. But I agree, Todd, the time you're going to get a new narrative when he lands a new team. But I don't like to really play make believe. I know this is fantasy football, but I'm not make believe in where could he go kind of thing. I'll wait until he does. That being said, I'm not feeling comfortable if I had a running back who survived the draft. He didn't get the competition that we were afraid of in the NFL draft because we still have Leonard Fournette and a lot of these other veterans out there, including potentially Dalvin Cook. So I just don't think you should feel comfortable in some of these, he's just walking into a huge opportunity share in the backfield kind of situation. Now, that being said, Dalvin Cook, I'm investing in these 2014 running backs everywhere. I think, 2014, I think he got drafted, or maybe it was 2017. I can't remember. But what
was that David Wilson's draft season?
Yeah, no. David Wilson was 2000s, early 2000s. Anyway, but I think just my biggest takeaway is that I'm curious if we are misrepresenting running back age in Dynasty and in fantasy football overall. I think that there could be a sample size issue and just a career arc issue as far as how running backs age. I think good running backs age better than bad running backs. I don't think we've had a lot of. And I think we've just seen it's a bigger conversation, but I just don't. When you see an RB age curve, I think it has a lot more to do with RB talent than their age. That's all I'll say. So don't think, he's definitely going to fall off. Invest for cheap prices for these older running backs and ride them off in the sunset and help get you W's.
Love that. And what's your guys' interest in Alexander Mattison, who seems to have got the lion's share of work right now on the team? But do you think the talent is there to be able to handle a big workload? And is he interested in Dynasty for you?
I think he has the talent, and I think that's why he's not interested in me in Dynasty, because I think the team holding on to him is going to look for an overpay, and I'm not willing to overpay for him.
Yeah, my favorite part about Alexander Mattison, he sounds like Alexander Hamilton from one of my favorite musicals. So that's the most interesting part of Alexander Hamilton for me.
We'll swiftly move on to
hey, they're from the UK. This is a sensitive topic, dude.
That's true. I should have said trigger warning.
I actually have. I'm in a UK C2C startup, and we started trash talking about the Revolutionary War. It was phenomenal.
Don't worry, you're not going to get any pushback from me and Matt. No. But Matt, we better move on to the next guy, and this guy we could be all in consensus with for sure.
Yeah, well, I feel like we're going to be in a consensus of saying that I think he's the wide receiver one for us all in fantasy. What we've seen out of him coming in to the NFL has been incredible. I think most people wouldn't have expected what's happened with Justin Jefferson and how great he has been from the moment he stepped onto the NFL field. He's constantly putting up huge numbers in fantasy. The situation looks to be great, being the wide receiver one with the Vikings. But the really interesting thing, because it's obviously impossible to trade for Justin Jefferson at this moment in time, that the value is it's stratospherical in terms of it's impossible to attain him in a trade. It feels like the only way you're going to get him is in a dynasty startup. That feels like where when you get Justin Jefferson, you usually get him in your startup and you're just holding on to him. So I'm interested to know, where would you be willing to take him in a Superflex startup? So just looking at DLF and where they've got him, they've currently got him ranked as the 9th player off the board. So it's Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, and then Lamar Jackson, and then finally the first player off the board that's not a quarterback is Justin Jefferson. Are you happy to pay that price in a startup, or would you rather still shoot for the quarterbacks in super flex drafts? And in which case, you're likely not going to have many shares of Justin Jefferson. Todd is pointing over to you, Dave, so you better kick things off with this one.
So I think this question is a look inward question and know yourself, know what strengths you are as a fantasy manager, because one thing that I actually think that really bothers me is that people think there's only one way to play Dynasty, and that's just totally false. I think that's, those are people who have some daddy issues that like to tell you what to do, and they maybe need to go get some help, some mental health, and see a therapist. So shout out to the Mind. Maybe they can set them up with that. But I will say that, there was a little shot there. But anyway, my point is that, there's more than one way to play Dynasty. And so know yourself. I'm not super confident moving up and down the board. I'm not, I don't join a lot of leagues, and I don't leave them after year 1 or 2. So I don't do a lot of startups. I'm not confident moving up and down the board. So, and I don't like, manage or mortgaging my future. So I'm comfortable with that anchor QB in Superflex. So I want the Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, Burrow. And then after that, I'm cool with going JJ right there, because there's still questions about those other QBs. The first round of startups is a lot of capital, a lot of value invested. You got to make the right choice. Now, I would be willing to trade down from Justin Jefferson at the 105 in a startup and see what I can get there, because people are moving up for those quarterbacks, and try to build my war chest that way. If I had to, I'd be totally cool taking Justin Jefferson 105, because I want that stud. And I think Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, and Burrow, they can raise the talent around them. They've done it. They've shown it. And I trust them. Now there's still risk there, blah, 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 injuries, whatever, but I've seen it done. Whereas still there's a projection with the other quarterbacks that are going before him in DLF ADP.
So just for a point, I did trade for Jefferson this offseason. So I just thought that'd be interesting to bring up. It was, I had like 7 first round picks in that league. And I traded the 102 and DK Metcalf. And it was like a lot of other pieces going back and forth. But that was the main piece that I was able to move for him. It was a steal, honestly. So the way that I look at Jefferson, he's my 3rd overall on the board. But the thing about it is that I don't have to take him there, Yeah. But like that's where I would value him. But I know other people don't, right? And Dave's 100% correct. You don't have to play Dynasty like one way. I like adding him as a QB, and I believe I like adding him over a QB, and I believe he's a better superflex option than 75% of the QBs in the league. So you're actually giving yourself a lot more versatility by putting him in that superflex piece. You know what I mean? So, and then eventually you can still go shop for a QB too for cheaper prices, and now you're putting him back at wide receiver, dude. And what are we talking about the trajectory with Justin Jefferson? We're talking a trajectory's GOAT status, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying he's going to be the GOAT, but he's on that trajectory path at 23. Like in the Dynasty, like what more do you want? Also, like what Dave said, like I'm totally fine if you want to take Hurts, Burrow, or like even Lamar Jackson over him. But to me, it's like I'm more confident in the consistency I'm going to get out of Jefferson for another 10 years than I am any quarterback, So, and I also think it's going to be producing at a quarterback level, So I'm very high on Jefferson. And I'm sorry, if anybody's saying he's not your wide receiver 1 right now, you are just looking for clickbait. You are a total attention whore. You know what I mean? Like, that's the only reason why you're doing it, is you're being contrarian to get attention, and I lost respect for you. That's it. And there's
luckily Todd never respected me, so that's good. No, Justin.
It's true. I mean, why don't you beat me, and then I will,
I have a couple screenshots, but they're
not in our Dynasty League.
I will say, if I have Justin Jefferson, I love hitting Kirk Cousins as my QB too. Like that's a stack that I want to have.
Yeah.
So
I just traded Geo Smith in the deal to get Kirk Cousins. Dave, are you okay with that?
Context is hard for rigid people like you, Todd.
Love that. We'll talk about the guy that some people have as their rookie wide receiver 1 now, who will be joining Justin Jefferson alongside him for the Vikings. So we've got to talk about Jordan Addison. So I want your advice here, because offensive rookie of the year is obviously coming up, and I'm going to be sticking my hard-earned money on Jordan Addison as potential offensive rookie of the year. Now, it might need a few injuries for that to happen, but firstly, do you think I'm wasting my money? And also, do you love the landing spot as much as I do opposite Justin Jefferson? And what do you think he can produce year one?
I don't think you're wasting your money. I think that's a fine bet. I really like Addison, but he might not even be number 2 in targets on his own team, right? There's a lot of wide pieces. I just don't. When you're opposite of Justin Jefferson's going to command a huge target share. And then you got Hawk, who's going to command targets. So obviously there's 3 mouths to feed. It's possible to feed 3 mouths, But I do up the spot as he's the clear wide 2. He'll see a ton of open looks in that offense, that's for sure. But there's clearly no path to him being a wide receiver 1 in that offense. That's one of the things I don't love about it. With that said, you got the potential of a Devontae Smith, like T. Higgins level. And you're talking about a guy who just burns people in one-on-ones. He's one of the best. He's going to be one of the best route runners in football the moment he sets on the field. So, this is like an off the dome projection that I did about an hour ago. I'm looking at like 75 catches, 850 to 900 yards, 5 to 6 TDs, as I would probably call his ceiling for year 1. And that's a good ceiling, right? Now, could he do more than that? Yeah, maybe. I think I'm being modest because of the way I feel about Jefferson, But yeah, but just for the whole idea of like for rookie of the year, I'm going Bijan, and then my dark horse would be Zay Flowers.
Look, I want Todd. Does that include week 17 in your projections? No, I'm just messing.
Dave, yeah, probably. Dave, you know how lazy I am about that. Like I'm just going. What's the season-long stats? Cool. I'll divide that. I don't give a shit. That is 100% true. I just don't care about cutting that out. It's just math I don't want to do.
Look, I'm not a gambler. I'm a dreamer. So this might be not the best
100% true. 100% true.
Look, it's a wide open field with 3 quarterbacks drafted in the top 4 picks, 3 first-round wide receivers. I think I can't count sometimes, and then 2 top 12 RBs are probably all have a realistic shot of being the rookie of the year. 7th highest odds at 17-1 to win rookie of the year for Addison. I think he's a really good player. I'm curious if right away, if Addison is getting the wide receiver 2 routes in that offense, or if he's going to have to compete with KJ Osborne, who's a really decent wide receiver 3 in that offense. So I'm not saying he can't, but I'm just curious. I don't think that's unsolved. I don't think it's a solved equation as far as how quickly he's going to take over the wide receiver 2 role, even though for dynasty in the future, I think this is a great landing spot. But at 17-1, especially with Bijan on the board and even Gibbs and the quarterbacks and just the other wide receivers, I don't think 17-1 are the type of odds I want. And I think if I'm going to be smashing, like if I'm going to be betting rookie of the year, I want the long shots. I want Devin Achane or however you pronounce it at 35-1. I'm not a Jonathan Mingo guy, but I'll take 50-1 or 71. I think he was a couple weeks ago. Like those are the type of odds I want to be betting on. If I'm going to put on my gambling hat, I'm not going to take the 7th highest odds to win. I'm going to bet on either the favorites before the juice was squeezed right after the draft, or I'm going to go on the long shots.
Yeah.
Sorry. And if that was supposed to be a dynasty question, I just answered like I was a true gambler. So I apologize.
I did put a futures bet down on Jefferson, who was 50-1 at one point for MVP, which I was like, if there was a wide receiver that could do it, it's fucking Jefferson. You know what I mean? Sorry, got some language in there, but yeah,
he's a teacher, no big deal. He does it all the time at work.
So I teach high school; they don't really react much. Yeah. So long story short is like, yeah, I agree with Dave on the odds piece, but Dave, you got like a really Nosferatu thing going on with the background, bro. Like, why are you so in the dark?
Because I'm still working in my basement. Like, I have a studio that's
did you not install the lights?
Built. No, it's a 3/4 built. I like the computer screen. I shaved for you guys. I took it a haircut. You can't see it, but I'm all fresh for you guys. I'm not my nerdy stat sheet kind of look here. So I kind of spruced up for the Streamathon.
I did not shave for you guys.
Love it. we'll move on to the final question on the Vikings, and
only 5 minutes behind schedule, guys. This is great.
Exactly. This is good going for you, this Dave.
Yeah, I'm quite impressed.
This is on schedule for us.
Matt, over to you for the Titan question.
Yeah, we'll obviously talk about TJ Hockenson briefly because, as Dave mentioned, he loves talking, Dave. So we'll quickly go over TJ Hockenson. Obviously, this past year, moving to the Vikings, putting in an incredible performance, finishes a tight end 2 overall, tight end 3 in fantasy points per game, averaging 13 fantasy points per game, following that trade in week 9. The question really is what I want to know is, obviously we know there's a top 3, and I might be stoking a fire here by mentioning these 2 because I know some people aren't saying that there's a definitive top 3. Maybe there's 2, but at this moment in time, it's Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and Kyle Pitts. You might not agree with Kyle Pitts being there, but who knows? But do you think that TJ Hockenson has the ability to break in to that top 3? Because to me, it feels like when you're talking about elite tight ends, there's one thing that seems to be in common, and that's the opportunity for the tight end. Travis Kelce, obviously the main guy over with the Chiefs. Mark Andrews has been the main guy with the Ravens. Do you think Hockenson can finally break into that tier, or is he always just going to be kind of, like Mags mentioned earlier, just the gatekeeper to the elite and going to be that guy that just sits behind the top tier in terms of dynasty?
Yeah, I'll jump in because mine will be quick. It is a difficult part with Addison coming in there. He actually is my tight end 3, honestly. This is when I'm just Kelsey's my 4 at this point. It's more about when I look at a 3-year window, he's dominant, right? But at this point is like him at age 37. Like, it's just like impossible for me to like buy. This is the time to sell Kelsey, in my opinion. You know, like he's depreciating like asset. You know, so that's why I'm putting Hawk over him. And it's not to say that I don't think Kelsey's going to outproduce him for the next like 2 to 3 years. It's just like after that, like Hawk's still going to be potentially going up where Kelsey's wrapping up. You know what I mean? So to me, it's that's where that's at. And my big thing with Hawk is he's super touchdown dependent in this offense when it comes to where his value lies. But the nice thing is that he's a phenomenal red zone threat. So I don't love that touchdown dependency piece, but he is going to put up like a decent amount of target share, and he's going to be able to stretch the field still too. So he is my tight end 3, but this is also why I tend to avoid tight ends in general.
Oh, I was all but ready to be efficient. You know, I preached efficiency, but now, you know, I was going to be quick. And then Todd triggered me with his Travis Kelce's a tight end. I don't even know what he said.
Then why? So tight end 4, and why are you taking forever to get to the point then?
Depreciating asset, his value was cut in it doubled last season. People were taking him as in the 50s in the startup, and now he's going to 28th because he was so good. I thought we learned our lesson here, Todd. I thought you like to win. It's good to see that you've come to the dark side and like to lose, like I do with this Kelce analysis.
Okay, because we're gonna jump off this because I traded Kelce for the 106 and the 109. Did I make a good trade?
Todd, that's a 2 tight end premium league, but that was a great trade.
Thank you. Point being, that's a time where you're going to sell him right now. Shut up and talk.
So, all right. So quickly for Hockenson, his routes, like just looking at him, his routes per game jumped significantly after this trade, like 8 routes per game, which is a big deal. Slight uptick in targets per route run, nothing really significant, but just a little bit. And he gained a lot of yards after the catch last season, which I think will revert a little bit to the mean, even though you like to see him use his athleticism that he tested at to be able to gain those chunk plays after the catch. So, and his TDs remain flat. So that's kind of what Hockenson did last year, despite, all the finishes and what have you, as far as fantasy points. I don't expect another volume. We've been talking about Minnesota. I don't see another bump for him in volume. So, so basically what you need to do for him to return this value at 13.3 targets or fantasy points per game, you need a TD boost, and you have to bet on that with added competition, with the worry of Cousins not aging well, and Addison coming in and taking up a large share of the targets, and KJ Osborne still exists. They might want to get back to the running game at some point in Minnesota. There's a lot of questions. And I don't like to invest in players that see significant jumps. The time to invest in Hockenson was last year when he was a tight end 6 and was depreciated. Now he's a 2 rounds more expensive in startup costs. That's just, I don't play fantasy that way. I like to get them before that jump and then either keep to my roster or to sell them for value. I love playing tight end to get that the value gain on my roster or the elite piece. I don't like to play this already, pay for what he's already. I just don't like I think it's a sunk cost when you try to make up for it by paying the premium after he's already shown it. And it wasn't elite. It was 13.3 points per game, tight end 2. It's not inspiring. If you look at historic tight end finishes, you want to see the 16 points per game, the true difference makers, the Gronks, the Wallers, the Grahams. You got to see a significant boost in production, which would have to come from TDs. So that's why I'm not necessarily all in on Hockenson. He's a fine player, but I'm not making that bet for seeing him to jump into that next level.
The only thing I'm going to say about tight ends, and then because I know we're short on time, is this is the year to invest in rookie tight ends. I do like the values in it, and also next draft was actually going to be a pretty decent tight end draft too. So you're looking at like that's when you're going to be buying in. You know, Laporta actually got more expensive than I liked by the time like his draft capital came around. That really upset me. But the point is like that's what Dave's talking about is like, and he's surprisingly right. So like those are the kind of guys that I'd be looking at.
All right. Absolutely love that evaluation of the tight ends landscape and the Vikings as a whole. So we'll talk about the Bears. We've got a bit less time, but to be honest, there's a few less interesting pieces on the Bears than there is compared to the
who
Vikings,
cares about the Bears? Good point.
I get it.
At least somebody does. So we'll start. I'll come to you first, Todd, and it will be quarterback on the question on the quarterback, Justin Fields, the dynasty darling right now. Finished as quarterback 7 last year. So what are the chances that he can actually take a step forward and be better than that in 2023? At that price, are you buying, are you selling, or are you just holding Justin Fields in dynasty?
If I have Fields, I'm only taking an overpay, and an overpay to me would be I'm netting 24 assets, or I'm getting a piece that is Fields in that tier or above Fields, where I'm having to give maybe a little bit more, right? But because he does have the ceiling to be he has a top 3 ceiling because his rushing floor gives him top 15. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking about QB. I'm talking about overall dynasty, you know? So to me, he's a hold unless you're getting a significant overpay. I just want to point out something interesting is that Caleb Williams, I just did a poll. He actually got picked over Justin Fields in like overall QB rankings. And I had 630 votes on it. So people are definitely not decided on Fields. But Fields is passing, and he got like a wide receiver 1. Like, he can throw the ball. He just didn't have anybody to throw the freaking ball to last year. It was embarrassing. So now that he's got the weapons in place and like he's got another year under his belt, he absolutely can ascend into that top 3. So if I'm not contending, I'm looking at a deal for Fields, but it's super roster dependent if it's even a reality for you to make that deal. Now, this is the one thing I will say to anybody listening. If you want to make a deal for Fields, please hit me up. I would love to work that out. I think that would be so fun to do. All I need to do, follow me on Twitter, message me, screenshot the guy who has it, screenshot your roster. I will happily curate a deal for you because I'm a nerd and I would have so much fun doing it because he's one of the funnest guys that is to try to go out and get. Not promising results, but I'm promising my efforts. So yeah, but yeah, I'm absolutely looking to hold him. But if I go buy him, like it's going to be a task. Dave, you know that I make crazy trades when it comes to the big boys.
Todd literally just took my quote. I tell the Quinn, you're not going to promise results, but I'm going to give you 100% effort. Like that's just.
Oh, I don't say that to my wife, buddy. Let me know if you need a tip.
That's like a t-shirt right there. All right, so back to Justin Fields is look, I don't see him improving his rushing. I think in order for him to jump into the next tier, I don't think it's going to be through rushing. I think he's going to have to repeat his rushing thing. So I'm not expecting a big bump in rushing because he had a phenomenal season rushing the ball last year. He's really going to have to improve as a passer. I think he has the talent to do so. And then also Chicago's invested money in the offensive line. They've upgraded their pass catchers and DJ Moore. But in order for this to happen, to get to that next level, he really needs to improve under pressure. And because sacks are almost as bad as turnovers, they are drive killers. And it's a big deal. And I think sacks are more of a QB stat than people want to let on. People always want to blame their offensive line, which was a problem last year, but it wasn't just the offensive line that had to do with Justin Fields' sacks. And I think like I said, he has the tools to succeed as a passer, but I think it's just a gamble. And for me, as a gamble for how much he costs, I'd rather invest in other ways. I'd either upgrade to pay a little bit more for one of the premium quarterbacks, or just pivot and go after Trevor Lawrence or someone else like that in the same area, or Justin Herbert, whose ease of buy for Justin Herbert because he didn't really produce like people were hoping. I think there's just a bit more ease of buy with Herbert than there is necessarily with Fields, even though Fields is very active in trades right now. So ultimately, and this is a big thing for me, the time to get Fields was when he was like a mid QB2 in October. Like he was like QB 18 in October for people, because that offense was sucking. They had no weapons. The offensive line was terrible. And then Fields took off and he just played hero ball. And that's what he is. He is that kind of player. He is that kind of talent. So the time to get him was then. Now paying these prices, I just don't like to play that. I don't like to, when I could have had him for a discount, a steep discount, and then have to pay top dollar. That's just not how I like to play fantasy. The time to get Fields was earlier. I'll pivot and try to attack that QB situation another way.
Yep, absolutely love that evaluation of Fields, a guy that I think can still take a step forward, but I'd rather not pay the money to see my chances on my team anyway. We'll move on to the running back position and question from you, Matt.
Yeah, now this is going to be a simple question, but the answer is no doubt going to be a tricky one for you guys. So the simple question is, how do you see this backfield playing out in 2023? And which of this backfield do you prefer at the current value? So the names that we've got, obviously Roschon Johnson, who they just selected in the NFL draft, he's RB34. Dante Foreman, he's currently at RB 54. And then Khalil Herbert, a guy that a lot of people liked last year. Now the waters seem a little bit muddy, but he's going as the RB 37. So, as I say, simple question. How do you see this backfield playing out? But I'm sure the answer won't be as simple, especially with having you two guys on. I know for a fact this isn't going to be a straightforward answer.
I'm actually going to keep this pretty succinct here. I don't think this backfield is done. I think they could add another piece to it. I'm totally fine of going out and getting any of these pieces. Roschon is one of the players I have not been able to get in any of my leagues this year. Even though I think there's some intrigue there. I agree that Herbert is a nice talent for his skill set, and I think Foreman's just been underappreciated ever since he had that Achilles injury. So in a deeper league, I love stacking up some running backs and pieces and darts, and that's what I like to do to approach this. But I don't feel like Justin Fields is the goal line back. He's going to be scoring a lot of those high value points. So, and then you have a committee here. You're going to have to bank on an injury. I totally fine at cost, but they're not like, I'm not pounding the table for any of these running backs, especially with the opportunity of a veteran coming in and making this even muddier.
Yeah, I'm with Dave. I'm all in on all these guys at ADP. But for me, this is like the JJ Zachariason territory where the guy with the highest ADP right now is Roschon. You know what I mean? And yeah, and I'm all about Johnson across the board. But a lot of people are like insanely high on him. Like I just went out feelers, and while Dave was talking about Fields, someone asked for Jahan Dotson for him, and I was like, okay, this is done. Like not even countering that because that's garbage. Danny, if you're listening, that was garbage. So long story short is, yeah, I'm with Dave. Like this backfield isn't done. They're gonna add a vet, but what makes Johnson the best pick is you shouldn't be expecting Johnson to be making some sort of like big jump in 2023, right? So they still put good capital, like almost a top 100 pick into him, and the guy is good, and he was hidden behind Bijan, and he was a quarterback just learning position. He's a freak athlete. So I like him as a stash, right? Now, as a stash, I'll overpay a little bit for him, but I'm not going to freaking move Jahan Dotson for him. You know what I mean? So, like, long story short is that, so yeah, if you actually make a bad trade-off for me, I will blast you. So, like, long story short is you just got to know your price point with him. So I like Johnson more, but I'll take any of those other guys too.
Yeah. I like that. And Matt, I know we're both big fans of Roschon Johnson coming into the process. And I've seen him go a lot of the time in the early third round or back of the second round in rookie drafts. Is that where you're happy to take him? And is he your favorite out of the three?
Yeah, I think that's about the right price point. And like Todd said, I think the hype started to build around Roschon Johnson. I think before the NFL draft, he was a lot of people's favorite sleeper, like a guy that not many people knew about because he was hidden behind Bijan Robinson, and nobody really knows because you look at the data, but it's such a small sample size compared to the other running backs that came into this into this class, and that he felt like a real sleeper. But obviously with the draft capital, the landing spot, people are going to be excited by that with the fact that he's so wide open at this moment in time. But I think, like both of the guys said, I think this is one of those backfields where if you're going to pick any for the guys like Ezekiel Elliott or Leonard Fournette to come in and disrupt the backfield, this feels like the one to me that could be the one that gets the biggest hit. But out of the three, I love Roschon Johnson. I think I'd rather pay that little bit more to get him. The younger guy, like Todd mentioned as well, the fact that he played quarterback, that could be really exciting. I mean, wouldn't it be funny to see him a wildcat position? He was at the quarterback. Justin Fields was like at the running back position. It could get super fun seeing him do one of those kind of plays, maybe even throw a pass here and there. So yeah, I think in terms of watching the NFL, I think Roschon's going to be exciting to see. But for fantasy as well, he's the one out of the three that I like.
You could see him in the slot too. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's good.
Yep.
And he could be QB2 if Hurts goes, or if Fields goes out. No, I'm messing.
We know he's got the rushing ability.
Stop it.
The troll is too easy.
Well, we'll move on to wide receiver and a guy that got traded to the Bears in the trade that saw them give up the number one pick. DJ Moore, obviously we know he's an uber talented wide receiver who constantly put up 1,000 yards on bad offenses. Currently wide receiver 20 on keep trade cut. This, to be honest, has not really changed much from the trade. In your opinion, guys, is it going to be a really productive stack with Justin Fields, or is there just not enough pass volume to go around that DJ Moore's not going to hit his ADP this season?
I wouldn't dare be the first one to talk about DJ Moore with Dave on there.
Wow. I was all ready to let Todd go, but yeah, no, DJ Moore, he's a top 12 wide receiver talent, in my opinion. He's my favorite player in the NFL, probably. What he's endured at the QB position is a travesty. Unfortunately, I think this trade is better for Justin Fields than it is for DJ Moore. I think Fields has to hit at his passing ceiling for DJ Moore to ascend his rightful heir to the wide receiver one overall in fantasy throne. So no, but I'm kidding. But I don't think that'll ever happen again. But no, but I think this isn't.
What do you mean again? It never happened.
Yeah. Well, it did for me. So that's
in your mind, but it never happened in reality. Let's just remember that.
It was good times though. Good times. No, but so this isn't like underdog, that's best ball. You have to have those stacks to correlate and win in some crazy week 17 scenario. I don't think Fields is the type of player that you need to stack. I think I'd rather, if I felt the need to stack Fields on a roster, maybe Darnell Mooney's a little bit more interesting to stack with. That's about it. But that being said, I love DJ Moore at value, at price. I probably am a little bit more stubborn to trade off of him at value than other people. I think he just in order to make that leap into the next tier, you really have to see Justin Fields hit your ceiling. And you guys have kind of seen how I felt about this throughout the last couple minutes here. So yeah, I think he's a great target. He's a little bit harder to buy because people did really think that Fields was a big upgrade for him. And it is like an upgrade, but it could have been so much better with the trade somewhere else. But yeah, I also haven't decided if I want the DJ Moore Bears jersey yet. The Carolina thing was so sexy. So yeah, it's tough to see the jersey change.
Jesus, dude, that went on forever.
Give me a break.
All right, I can't believe I'm higher on the DJ Moore move than Dave, and Dave is maybe he's just depressed at like what he's had to deal with. And I love that Dave talks about like living in the future with QBs, but yet he can't expect Justin Fields to become a better quarterback when he actually has a wide receiver one now. So Justin Fields is hey,
watch the Chase Claypool hate, please. Come on.
Oh, I'll hate on Chase Claypool all day. Do we want to finish the show that way? Long story short is that like Fields is a very accurate deep ball thrower, and he just doesn't have the guy to do that with. DJ Moore's ADOT is about to explode. All right. And he's the perfect complement to what Fields can do as a passer. Because I actually watched Fields in college where Dave just likes to play with spreadsheets. So like long story short is
I watch a lot of highlights.
Yeah, I know you do. I actually watch him. You know what I mean? So, like, he's got an outstanding deep ball, and he hasn't had the chance to do it. The reason his rushing stats went up so much, he was running for his freaking life because he had nobody open. You know what I mean? So, like, DJ Moore there, like, you're looking at top 12 ceiling. He's in my feeling, his floor is wide receiver 18. Like, I just love this freaking stack. I don't know. It'd be kind of weird. It really depends on the owner, like how high they are on the stack. I got offered DJ Moore for Deontay Johnson in a 4th, and I was like, I actually texted it to Dave. I'd be like, should I take this? Which I was just trolling Dave, and and I got it offered to me, and I was like, hell yeah, you know. So yeah, no Deontay Johnson hate. I think he's a good buy. But the point is that I love him. I love this a lot more than Dave, and Dave needs to see the stats from Justin Fields before he can buy into it. I love this whole look into the future thing, but I have no nuts about it. So, would you like to respond?
I love DJ Moore, and I hope he smashes. And he's my most rostered player, so I hope it happens. But I'm not going to tell people to go out there and you have to buy him. I think it's totally fine to see him.
Yeah,
but I don't think he's necessarily a target necessarily.
I think it's like, just kick the tire, man. Like, see what the price is. Like, my guess is that if somebody has him at value where we're seeing him, he's a buy in me. But if somebody's putting him over that and looking for the overpay, don't overpay for him.
Yeah, completely agree. I've actually got him ranked a bit lower than that, so you'd definitely be able to buy him off me. But we'll move on to Darnell Mooney, the wide receiver 2 on this team, and over to you, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, he's not as exciting to talk about as what it was last year, obviously going into that season as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. But now with DJ Moore there, it's kind of a muddied water with Darnell Mooney. But going back to 2021, he actually had that really solid year, finishing as the wide receiver 23. Showed flashes last year before the injury. And that connection that he had with Justin Fields. So really, I just want to know from you guys, is there any hope for Darnell Mooney? Do you now see him as just that more boom or bust guy? Dave kind of mentioned in best ball, he's maybe one of the stacks that you could look at a far cheaper value than what you get in a DJ Moore. And as I say, he has the flashes, but in terms of just regular dynasty, is this somebody you're still happy to have? Do you think he's somebody you can rely on when it comes to your bye weeks and you're needing that flex player? You're still happy to turn to Darnell Mooney, or is it just somebody now that you're completely done with now that DJ Moore's in town?
All right, I'll go first because we're short on time, and I do have a lot to say on this. Nope, he's not my flex, and I shall stash him until he has a monster week, then trade him. Okay, I'm done.
Todd was all in on Mooney too. He really liked him as a rookie. I remember, and Todd was one of the first people to actually go and say that.
And so he smashed at value.
So yeah, I just want to give Todd some props, even though he's a huge jerk. So
him and Tony Pollard and Apple Goddard are my best.
Oh, come on! I don't want to read your resume right now. But no, Mooney's a good player. The time to get him was when he was injured, and he's going to be a great depth piece. I love him in a deeper league. You know, in your start 3-1 flex, I don't think he might be the greatest target, but in a lot of the leagues Todd and I play where you have 3-4 flexes, or, in our home league, in our Tail 2 Rivals league, we have start 5 wide receivers and an additional flex. So that's a great place to go get him. But in your typical start 3 with a flex, he's not necessarily a huge go get right now, even though he's a nice little stash for the bye weeks and flex. I think he's a good player. This is the most target competition he's probably ever had. And again, you have Justin Fields scoring a lot of the high value touchdowns too. So I don't think you're going to have to rely on the big play and him carving out a role in that offense. So I think he's a great player, great success story. I hope he comes back healthy. He's a guy I like to root for.
Yeah, and while we're talking wide receivers, Ali, should we throw this question out that Fantasy Guys just asked about Tyler Scott? Obviously, a name that a lot of people were excited about coming into the NFL draft. What do you see? Todd, you're pointing to yourself. Go on, give us the answer. How do you see him in fantasy this year?
He is one of my favorite rookie buys. Okay, the reason is that the cost is almost free, right? You're looking at a really ambiguous situation at the wide receiver too. Mooney, a lot of things is also based off a lack of competition. Claypool sucks. That was an awful trade, right? So you're also looking at from contract wise, like they both might be gone. You know what I mean? And Tyler Scott, the fact the Raiders are so the Raiders, like Trace Tucker going over him was embarrassing. You know what I mean? So Tyler Scott is a good player. He can play out of the slot. He's fast. He's somebody who could in reality end up as their wide receiver too. Do I think that's gonna happen? No, but it's in the realm of possibilities for basically no cost. He's a stash, and you're going to be able to get him for if you're a contender, moving a third for him is not even a terrible idea because you're just stashing him for essentially what would be an early 4th. And I really, really like his situation. But I also liked him as a player, and I thought his draft capital was insulting, to be flatly honest. He should have been an early day 3 pick, and he wasn't, So like, to me, I'm in on him. I love the landing situation, and I actually think he works out well in where he fits in that roster and playing with Justin Fields.
Look, the cookie cutter response to Tyler Scott is, no, you need to draft running backs in the 3rd and 4th round of your rookie drafts. Well, you know what? Everyone's following that advice. There are no running backs left in the 4th round. Tyler Scott is a great stash. I know I'd love to stash running back there, but they're all gone by then. Sorry. So I can't. So good thoughts from Todd here.
Also, if you're looking for all those running backs, they have a tougher road to actually having value than that wide receiver does. So if you really want to throw that in, you're just swinging for the fences, where I'm going to play the smart game and say, this guy has a better path to be able to get on the field than this freaking running back that went in the 7th round for a freaking reason. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm team wide receiver all day.
I know a couple of people in the NFL scouting, especially at PFF, that had Tyler Scott in their top sort of 6 wide receivers in this draft process. So the talent is definitely there. So I completely agree. We'll quickly recap tight end and Cole Kmet. For me, is he one of the biggest sales in Dynasty for you guys? The real question is, he finished as tight end 7 last season on the back of some insane touchdown production. Is there any way that he can get back there again in 2023 and beyond, or are you just trying to sell at his cost?
No. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Sell him for what? A 4th round pick? Like, what are you getting for him? People are like, oh, he's a sell, right? What are you going to sell him for, guys? Like, not for you guys, but like, that's what you always hear. Hey, he's a sell, must sell. All right. Yeah. What are you going to sell him for? Like a future 25th or like a 2025 3rd round pick? Like, look, he's had decent target share and a low volume offense the last 2 seasons, some TD luck. Look, he's fun. He's a depth piece in the tight end premium league, but he's not someone I'm thinking about. I look at my roster, I think Cole Kmet, I just move on to the next thing to think about with my roster. Like, that's about it.
I had 3 shares of him. Now I have none. There you go. All right. I just made a deal where I moved to 109. I got like Deontay Johnson, Judy, and then I got Schultz in the deal. And I find Schultz to be a significant upgrade. I like buying Schultz at tight end right now. If you want to talk about ambiguous like target shares, like the Texans do. You know what I mean? He's like the most proven piece there, So like, I liked that move a lot. So yeah, I'm totally out on Kmet. And then you bring in Tunyon, who's actually like, not really high on Tunyon, but he's competition, So yeah, Kmet sucks. Get anything you can for him.
I think he's a guy that you can sort of throw it, not throw him, but he can, if you're trying to trade up, is a guy that can move you from a couple of spots in a rookie draft or from one veteran to another. Matt, are you the same? Are you looking to get what you can for Kmet? Obviously not sell too cheap. Would you be happy to hold him if the offer's not there?
To be honest, I'm just looking to move him, like the guys have mentioned. I think people are going to buy into the fact that we've seen flashes from him with Justin Fields last year, and like you mentioned, I think for me, when I've got Cole Kmet, I'm probably looking to use him as a pivot up where possible, pay a bit extra and get a little bit more solidification in my tight end room rather than a Cole Kmet. And with the added question mark now of DJ Moore being there, yeah, I'm just struggling to buy into Cole Kmet. Never really been big on him anyway, so it's always been tough for me to get on to him. But yeah, at this moment in time, I'm looking to move off where possible.
Hey guys, I know we're here for fantasy football, but because of the Mind Charity, I was hoping I could just have a moment to talk about mental health real quick.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So my job is I'm a therapeutic learning center teacher. So I work with kids who are struggling all the time. And the majority of girls that advocate, the majority of students that advocate to me are females. It's because they're more comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're taught as men not to be able to ask for help. Right. We're taught as men to be strong. We're taught as not to be able to show weakness. That's complete bullshit. Okay. To pardon my friends. As a man, you're stronger by actually applying yourself to your mental health. It's best for you. It's best for your loved ones. It's best for everything that goes into it. So anybody should be asking for help. Anybody should be looking for those things. It's total BS. I take medicine for anxiety and depression. I go to therapy bi-weekly, and I'm a pretty happy dude. All right. So anybody can benefit from those things. All right. And I'm happy sharing that with people to end the stigmatism. And I'll also be the first one to trash talk you and kick your ass in fantasy football. So my vibrato is not necessarily means to like the work that goes behind it. So I just wanted to speak to the male perspective on mental health for a second. And I felt that this was a good group to talk about with.
That's amazing. Amazing words.
All right.
Yeah, really well said, Todd. Yeah. Absolutely love that. And yeah, absolutely loved having you both on. It's been some absolute awesome dynasty knowledge. And it's always an amazing time to have you two on. Me and Matt just have to sit back, listen to you go off and your different opinions, and it is fantastic. You learn so much from both of you. So thank you so much for coming on. Can you just remind the audience where they can find you, and is there anything you two want to plug?
Look, you can hit us up at FF_Bannerman, FF_Spaceman. Tailored to Rivals will be appearing again in the future. But again, I just want to say, mind charity, it matters. What's awesome is that mental health awareness is up. I never used to know that May was mental awareness month. I think that's good to just know, at least in the States it is. I think that's really incredible. Just that the conversation around it, that Todd to come out and say what he said was amazing. So what's more important is you should be following the Fantasy Wildcard. They have amazing guests, amazing content. They are in my downloads. I listen to them every week, and I can't say enough about the people involved at the Wildcard and their numerous shows, and that they do the Streamathon as one of my favorite events of the fantasy calendar. I cannot say enough. Respect you guys. I know we're cutting into someone else's time. I love you guys. I love what you're doing, and thank you again for having us. This means a lot to me. Thank you guys.
I know we're cutting in on time, but these are the three things to remember if someone comes to talk to you about help. It's like the three number one things you can say. I'm here for you. You matter. Tell me more. And I want to help you find help. Those are the three things that you can say to somebody if they come to look for you for help. Like, there's more to it, but if you know those three things, you can make a difference. That's it. Okay. On top of that, I did want to plug one thing that's a little selfish. I'm actually starting a new stream next week called the Trade Portal, and the whole idea around it is trading between C2C leagues. So like in C2C, you have a campus league, you have a Canton league, and what it makes it unique is how you're trading from campus to Canton. So like trading Caleb Williams for a NFL piece, and like, what does that look like? It's my favorite way of trading because it's super degenerate. So I look forward to doing that. It's going to be a lot of solo and guest stuff. And because I'm a teacher, there's a lot of Google slides to go with it. So you have visuals. So so I'm looking forward to starting that next week.
Yeah, look forward to seeing that. And thank you both so much for coming on and sharing this hour with us, with your amazing Dynasty College content. And yeah, just two awesome people. So cheers for coming on, Dave and Todd.
Yep. Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you later. Take care. And just quickly from us too, a huge thank you for all the donations we've received so far. You can still donate right up until the end of June. So just check out our link on our pinned tweet at Fantasy Wildcard, or on Twitter, or search Fantasy Wildcard Charity Streamathon 2023 on Just Giving page. Thank you for supporting my charity that we've just spoke about.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll now move over to the other side of the NFC North and talking about two amazing teams, but we've got two amazing guests coming on to help us get through these teams as well. So I'm going to bring on Mike and Chev, who you might know from the Dynasty Rewind crew. Two guys that we always love having on. We had you on last year, guys, so we had to have you back on. It was a lot of fun having you on. And yeah, how are you both doing?
I'm doing great. I'm coming off a vacation. So, Mike, nice to see you from like 15 days ago, it seems like. But I'm feeling really great. So, mental health is on fire right now. It's been incredible to just get away and take those vacations. Those days are used for a reason. You get those days to get that break. So, if I can't say anything, use your days. Don't be that guy that says, I'm gonna be the best for my company. I'm never going to take a day off. Don't be that guy. Do not be that guy, because I was that guy at one point in my young life. So don't do that.
Your young life? You're still in your young life, man.
Dude, I am old. I am getting way old.
Jeff, how old are you now? I always forget how old you actually are.
28 right now. 29 this year.
I got a decade on you, bud. I got a decade on you. I'm going great. I do agree with Chev. Take your days, because you know what? At the end of the day, the fact of the matter is this: if you died tomorrow, your company is finding a replacement. The people that can't find a replacement for you is your family. So take care of yourself first, and then everything else falls into place. I used to be the same way as Chev. I was a workaholic because I wanted money, and now all I want is to spend time with my wife and little girl. So Chev's right. Take your days. Take care of yourself. Like Jerry Springer would say, take care of yourself and each other. I should have ended with that instead of starting it up. Good morning, everybody. How are we today?
I mean, don't worry, Mike. We've got a full hour, so I mean, people might have forgot that you've said that. They might not have caught it at the beginning, so you can throw that in at the end, and that'll be a great way to sign off. But yeah, great words to start the show. And as I mentioned at the top, we've got two teams we're going to talk about: the Lions and the Packers. So we'll get straight to the dynasty talk. This is the part that people are looking forward to hearing your opinions on. So, Ali, we're going to go to you and kick things off at the quarterback position.
Yeah, so we'll talk about Jared Goff. Obviously, had a really decent season in 2022. So what get your guys' thoughts on what your confidence level is in Jared Goff in terms of dynasty? Do you think he is the Lions' long-term starter? And then with that, with his value, is he a buy or is he a sell for you?
Chev, can I start because I'm like the biggest Jared Goff fan that's not a Detroit Lions fan.
Yeah, go for it.
I love Jared Goff. I think he's great. And as far as if he's a long-term starter, I don't know. Is Hendon Hooker really a threat to Jared Goff? If you ask Zach, one of our crew members, he'll tell you, I didn't watch a single second of Hendon Hooker, yet here's why you should draft him beyond a reasonable doubt. I like Jared Goff, and I think the Detroit Lions like Jared Goff more than fantasy players do. Here's the thing that we all need to remember as fantasy players and dynasty players specifically is this. The NFL does not care what you think about their teams. They build their franchises to win. We have to adapt to what the NFL does. If you don't do that, you're mid, as the kids say. I don't know. That's a thing. We didn't say that when I was younger. But you're just going to be a middle-of-the-pack team. Jared Goff puts up good fantasy points. He was able to support Amon-Ra St. Brown, TJ Hawkinson when he was there, a bunch of other wide receivers. He was able to support those guys. He was able to check the ball down to DeAndre Swift. I have no problem with Jared Goff as a long-term start. As a matter of fact, I won a league last year with Jared Goff and Geno Smith as my two starting quarterbacks. I obviously went heavy at other skill positions. So to me, Jared Goff is a good punt to quarterback type guy, as you can call it. And I think Jared Goff is good enough where even if he's not the long-term starter in Detroit, he is better than other starters elsewhere. Let's just say Detroit's they like what they see out of Hendon Hooker and they're like, we're going to move on. I could tell you right now, he could go to Tampa Bay and be an upgrade. If Aaron Rodgers decides to pack it in, he's a upgrade over Zach Wilson. And there's going to be other places too. There's uncertainty about Mac Jones in New England. So there's places he could go. Somebody gets hurt, he goes in and fills in. I like Jared Goff. I'm all aboard. And if you follow him on Instagram, follow his fiance too. So you know that Jared Goff is winning on and off the field. He's doing all right. Jared Goff's doing fine. I'm all in. And I'm holding or buying if I can. To answer your question.
So now we know why Mike's an actual fan of Jared Goff, it sounds like.
Whatever it takes. And, the funny thing is, as an Eagles fan, we all thought that in 2016, when him and Carson Wentz were drafted, Wentz would be the guy. Now he's unemployed. We did get a Super Bowl out of it, so I'm happy. But Jared Goff, fire him up.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat. I think for the next 2 years, I feel pretty safe with him being in Detroit. I mean, last year, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 4,438 yards, like 65% completion. Like, did a heck of a job. We just have to know, like, his ceiling is not up with these other guys. It's just never going to be because that rushing upside is not there. It's just never going to happen with him. So you have to just realize, like, I'm hoping to get like a top 10 or a 10 spot. Like, I'm not going to be top 5. There's probably no chance it's probably going to happen. So just have to be realistic. But like last year, this team sucked defensively. Like, Jared Goff went kind of off. I'm going to read you guys the scores of last season. And he put his team in good positions. So Jared Goff's team scored 35, the other team 38, 36 to 27, 24 to 28, 45 to 48. This was a bad one. 0 to 29, 6 to 24, 27 to 31, 31 to 30. I mean, teams are putting up massive points on these guys, and they were somewhat sticking around. So I think he's pretty safe. He played well last season. It's not like he just kept turning the ball over, throwing interceptions. He 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. The run game was great, which helped him, but I honestly think he's a buy. Like Mike said, he won with Geno Smith and Jared Goff. Like, Mike probably didn't see that happening in the beginning, like right before the season started. Did not probably see that, but they both played well. I think Jared Goff is a good piece to go get for like maybe like a QB2, QB3 probably at best. And I really like what he has in that offense. I mean, they're giving him some pieces as well to work with.
Only 11 turnovers last year as well, 7 interceptions and 4 fumbles lost. So he's not a guy that really puts the ball in bad positions a lot. And just look, I'm looking at his game logs from last year. He had 1 clunker, and it was against the Packers. He only threw for 137 yards, but he still did have 2 touchdowns at least. So aside from that, there was one other one against the Giants. Looks like they ran the ball a lot, 165 yards. But everything else was pretty good. I mean, you could pencil him in. Like Chev said, your floor is really safe with Jared Goff. And sometimes that's okay to build your rosters around guys like that. I have no problem with that at all.
Yeah, no, you both made some great points. Clearly, Mike, as well. I've got to add the wife hotness into the data point as well when I'm going through my quarterback evaluations, because that clearly plays a big part.
It matters.
Exactly. If you're happy off the field, it shows on the field. Surely.
If you evaluate me and you add wife hotness into the equation, I all of a sudden go up a couple ADPs.
Love it. Yeah, and Ali, have you got any final thoughts on Jared Goff? I think we're all in a similar boat here in saying that Goff's took a big step forward last year, and maybe we're not giving him the props that he deserves, and maybe the future outlook's better than we think, even if it's not with Detroit. Then I think maybe he's got more opportunity than maybe we're giving him credit for. So are you in a similar boat with Jared Goff?
He's just a good guy to root for. He's just a nice guy on the field, off the field. And what he produced, as you mentioned, with that trash defense last year in Detroit, I think a lot of people, even if they're not Detroit fans or Jared Goff owners, they root for the Lions. They root for Goff to do well. And personally, he won me a bit of money in DFS last year with that stack with Amon-Ra St. Brown, because he was always underpriced and them games were popping off. So, yeah, I think the ceiling is still there for Jared Goff to have a really good 2023. And then they're talking about an extension for Goff. So if they get that done, secure him for another couple of years, yeah, why not? He's certainly a great quarterback too to have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously we spoke about this offense and Jared Goff and how he carried it last year, but there's not just Jared Goff involved in this offense. There's a load of weapons. Obviously they added some new younger weapons this year, but the offense as a whole is quite young. But the big addition this offseason was Jahmyr Gibbs. The fact that they took him so early in the NFL draft, I think that shocked a lot of people, but clearly they think very highly of Jahmyr Gibbs. And you look at him in terms of fantasy and where he's currently ranked, he's gone right up there as the RB5 on Keep Trade Cut. So I just want to know what you guys think about this landing spot. How do you think his role plays out in 2023? Obviously, DeAndre Swift moving on, does he just fit into a like-for-like role of what DeAndre Swift has? And do you think that's what we're looking at, a pass-catching running back? Or do you think maybe there's even more to him than what we're expecting at this moment in time in this offense?
Yeah, and I think he's going to be great. When we first scouted him, I was saying, like, the passing, that's the main thing I'm looking at. The rushing, to me, is the bonus that I'm going to be getting with him, because he's so good pass routes. Like, he runs so many good routes. He's such a good asset. He's got soft hands. Like, anything after the pass catching, I'm going to be happy with. It's just going to be bonus for me. And he's a good rusher. It's not like he's a bad rusher. He's good at that. So I think he's going to be a really solid back for the Lions. I don't know if he'll get to top 5 this season with Montgomery there. I think it's going to be a little tougher, because I think they like using 2 running backs to keep them a little more fresh, which makes total sense because that's what the whole NFL is doing now at this point. But he has a lot of upside in Dynasty. I mean, the guy is just incredible. PPR magnet, man. Like, he's a guy you want on your roster and just be very happy with what you get, because he's going to catch probably 6 to 7 passes each game, possibly. Like, that is an actual possibility for the dump downs from Jared Goff. So I'm super excited about Jahmyr Gibbs. He has so much talent. He's a fast guy too. So I think it's going to be great. I just think it's going to be a little tough for him in the beginning, just because you have a guy like Montgomery who he's not no slouch. Like, he's a good running back that can pound on first and second down.
I don't love or hate RB5. I get it, but so I brought up DLF's Superflex ADP, and they have him at running back 11, which to me feels a little bit more right. I mean, obviously, a lot of people like Keep Trade Cut. I just can't get the layout of the website. I don't know. I'm old. So just looking at it, like, ahead of him on DLF, you got Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, Saquon Barkley, Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, and Austin Eckler. Honestly, the only people I would probably take out of that is Austin Eckler, because there's a lot of uncertainty. Is he going to play this year? He's taking a lot of hits. I would probably take Kenneth Walker out of there with Zach Charbonnet coming to town. Maybe Saquon Barkley still hasn't signed that franchise tag. And Christian McCaffrey scares the crap out of me because he's taken so much abuse. So I would say I'd put him in like the top 8. But there's other guys that I'm not going to reach on Jahmyr Gibbs if I'm in a startup draft. I'm going to take players like Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs. I'm going to take these guys over him because they're still young enough where they're going to give me production for a while. Look, Jonathan Taylor is 24 years old. And let's be real. Who do you want on your team, Jonathan Taylor or Jahmyr Gibbs?
Jonathan Taylor.
I mean, I want Jonathan Taylor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everyone said he's not a pass catching back. We all say what we all hear about Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going to be this, he's going to be that. We've seen it time and time again. These guys get into the NFL, and they're completely different from what it's speculated to be. Chev's right. He's a great receiver. I think he's a very good and very underrated runner too. I like him. I don't like him at running back 5, to be honest with you. But I am a Jahmyr Gibbs fan. I think the spot's good. I'm also a big buy low on David Montgomery guy too. I think he's going to have a really good role. Don't expect like the Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift from last year. It's going to look completely different. I think it's going to be effective for both players though. I'm really excited to see what the lines are this year. Why you guys have me on here talking about NFC North teams? 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, 7 o'clock Chef's time. Why bring me on and talk about the Eagles, man? Come on. Get me off.
I'm a Bears fan. You don't get the choice. This is BS for me. I gotta talk about the 2 teams I hate.
I know. Like
it's 7 o'clock here.
Who do you think wins the NFC North this year? I gotta be honest with you. I think the Lions have a good shot to win the NFC North, really.
Yeah.
I agree. Lions and it's gonna be a showdown between Lions and Vikings, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's good to know that his guests aren't happy with the slot that we've given him here. They're giving us the pellet.
I'm not unhappy. I'm happy to be here with you guys. Raise some money here.
I mean,
I'm happy about that.
You can't please everyone, and obviously we know Kev. He sets all this up. He's got his OCD. We had to start with the Eagles at the top of the show.
Who did this show sheet is what I want to know, because this must have taken forever.
Again, that's all Kev's handy with. But talking to Kev, it's probably a good thing, Ali, that we've not got Kev on at this moment in time, because Kev's super high on Jahmyr Gibbs. He's got him as the RB2 currently in Dynasty. So Kev is definitely in on Jahmyr Gibbs. And luckily, because Mike's waiting to chomp
never
at Kevin.
stepped foot on the field.
and Kev's getting away with this one. But Ali, I know you're pretty high on him as well. Maybe not quite as high as what Kev is, but do you see it as a similar way? Do you think it's going to maybe be a slow start for Gibbs? He's just going to be more of the pass catching back, and like Chev mentioned, he's going to be sprinkled in as a runner, but I think the main part is going to be that receiving game.
Yeah, I think the good thing with Gibbs is he doesn't have to be an every down workhorse to have a specialized role in the NFL and be productive. He perhaps only needs 50%, 40% of the work to be really productive on this offense. You think about the offensive line and how good the offensive line is for the Lions. I think it's going to create lots of holes for Gibbs. Montgomery's going to be the early down guy, and Gibbs is going to be the guy that runs through the holes. He's going to be playing in the slot, catching the balls. So PPR, I think he's going to be really valuable. So I do have him as RB5 in Dynasty, but I don't think he's going to produce as RB5 straight away.
Love it, and I love seeing we've got the show sheet up and seeing Mike there putting a little love letter to Kev when he comes on and sees that.
He's not on, so I gotta be like, what's up, Kev?
And I mean, I should keep the show running, but I will let you into the secret, Mike. Kev, we're a little cautious about letting you have access to the show sheet. He was worried about what you might do, so I mean, you put a little note on him for you there. Let's see how he responds to that. But we better move on. Kev's not here to defend himself, so Ali, we'll go back to you and talking about the other running back. We've mentioned him briefly, but let's talk a little bit more about Montgomery.
Yeah, so Montgomery moved across to the Lions, so he's gone from sharing the backfield with DeAndre Swift. 12th pick in the draft, Jahmyr Gibbs, so obviously who we've just talked about. So what sort of role do you think Montgomery will have on the Lions? And at running back 33 on Keep Trade Cut, is he a sneaky buy for you too?
Oh yeah, sign me up. You need guys like this on your roster. He's going to come in. He's going to be productive. I have no problem. I'm looking to actively acquire David Montgomery wherever I can. People love to hate on him. He's been a productive player in the league. Sign me up. Running back 33. He's going to outperform that easily. I think he's probably like running back 20, 21. And what you're going to pay to get him, I'm on board 100%.
Yeah, and like you guys said, like the offensive line is pretty stinking good now. They've done a lot of rebuilding there, and that's how you should rebuild your team. Start in the trenches and work your way out. That's the way to go about it. You know, we saw Jamal Williams last year just go absolutely bonkers with touchdowns in the red zone, and I think in some capacity it's going to be sort of like the Jamal Williams role, where first and second down you can pound it a little bit, make them fear the run, and then do whatever you want after that. I think that's sort of what's going to happen with Montgomery. I mean, it was fun to have him on the Bears. He was always a great player. He's a guy that, he busts his butt. He's got good contact balance. I just remember there was a picture of him like at Iowa State. And it was like Saquon Barkley, just named off like a bunch of randomly good players that was like his comps. Like feet was this, feet was that, power was this. Like it was just like the best players in the NFL. Everybody hated him. I think because of that, they just had too high of expectations, honestly. And RB33 is insane to me. I mean, I know we're using a lot of 2 running back schemes now in the NFL, but RB33 I think is a little too low for him. If you can get him cheap, I am going to acquire him a lot this upcoming year. Especially, I mean, DLF. I'm sure he's going to be super cheap with Jahmyr Gibbs being the 12th pick too. So, and best ball. I mean, I would love to have him around RB33. I'd be thrilled to get him there.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. I think that the price where he's going around those guys that are more just handcuffs, whereas David Montgomery's got a role. And I think even beyond that, if anything were to happen to Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously we don't wish for injury, but if anything were to happen, if he were to go down, we've already seen improving production from David Montgomery, both in the running and the receiving game. Now, I'm not saying he's anywhere near a Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's shown that he can be productive in the receiving game as well. And obviously, Chevin, you know that better than anyone, being a Bears fan. So I think it's somebody to be really excited about, not just because he's going to have a role anyway in this offense, but were anything to happen, he's better than a handcuff. He's somebody that's got production early, but it can be the lead back in this offense behind a great O-line, like we've mentioned, with a quarterback that's not scared to pass the ball to his running back either. So I think Montgomery is probably, for me, one of the best buys right now in terms of dynasty, for the fact that people are now scared because Jahmyr Gibbs has come in. So yeah, I absolutely love that for David Montgomery. Al, have you got any final thoughts before we move on to the wide receivers?
No, I'm sure there are people that see Jahmyr Gibbs land there and just think Montgomery's not going to have a role. I think my two favorite moves in terms of running backs was Miles Sanders moving to Carolina and Montgomery moving to the Lions. I think both of them are good values right now, and Jahmyr Gibbs going there probably makes Montgomery even more of a value than he was beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. And one final thing before we do move on, Mike, I've got to give you a bit of praise here as well, because when we had you on our show, we actually briefly spoke about Montgomery when Kev was talking about rookie picks, and you was asking, would you throw a mid-second to get a David Montgomery? And at the time, obviously, it was before the NFL draft, and Kev was, and I think myself as well, we're excited by this upcoming class, but you mentioned about going after a guy like that, like a Miles Sanders, and obviously now at this point in time, it probably looks like great value with this bit of it's been a bit of an upset in terms of this class. I think overall, I think the hype was massive back then, and now it's kind of died out a little bit. So yeah, I'll just give you a little bit of props there. Kev wouldn't have done that after you put that love letter onto him, but I'll give you your flowers, Matt. Kev's
gonna have to get over it, man.
Absolutely, but that was a great shout back when we had you on recently. But with that, we'll move on to the wide receivers, and I think we've got to start with Amon-Ra St. Brown. When he came into the NFL, I think some people liked him as a sleeper, but I don't think anyone was truly a diehard fan of his. I think he was a guy that was slipping in rookie drafts, seeing him go late second in quite a lot, even later than that in some, but really showed some flashes in his rookie season. And then last year really built upon that. I was somebody that was quite skeptical on him. I thought it was all down to the opportunity that he had as a rookie, but it proved me completely wrong this past season, backing up, finished as the wide receiver 7. But we do know that the Lions continue to add weapons to this offense. We've obviously mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs. We've got last year's first round wide receiver, Jameson Williams, returning after the suspension that he's obviously going to serve to start the year. So I just want to know, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, have you got any pause for thought with that added competition that's now coming in? Looking at his ADP is going around the wide receiver 7. Are you still happy to pay that kind of price for Amon-Ra St. Brown, or do you think now is probably the time to maybe jump off and go to somebody that's maybe a little bit more established in the NFL?
Why stop doing what's working, Chev, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead. You go first. I love this. I want to bring up some more stats, but
big stat guy here. and he's gonna follow your Twitter wives apparently. But yeah, I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was in the same boat last year. I'm like, I think I'm gonna trade him for a first. People are giving that up for him, so I'm gonna get that. And now I regret that completely because he's such a good value. He's such a good wide receiver. He bets on himself. I mean, a lot of the wide receivers in Detroit apparently bet on themselves, it sounds like.
I love that.
But yeah, I mean, I could see him still being a top 12 wide receiver, even with all these pieces that are coming in. We might see a little regression, especially with Jahmyr Gibbs coming in. He's going to be doing a lot of pass catching work, it sounds like, even out of like the wide receiver slots and the slots and whatnot. But I still think he's a top 12 guy. I mean, the amount of targets that he gets and the productive targets, like, he's a guy that you can count on every single week. You throw him in your wide receiver position and you're happy. You look back at the end of the week, you're like, yep, Amon-Ra St. Brown did it again. And, I was not expecting that. I was thinking, a little regression, but he did it. I mean, he's made everybody look a little bit wrong in the NFL and in fantasy. So, and that's a guy I want. I want a guy that has a little edge to him too, that like wants to be the best. And you can see that he's a fiery guy, and he's proven that, yeah, hey, I'm a dude. I'm going to be here for a while. And 146 targets last season, that's something to get excited about.
They didn't really bring in a lot of competition if you think about it. DeAndre Swift is gone and replaced with Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's even. Yeah. Look at we know Jameson Williams is going to be back, and having another good wide receiver across from you just pulls coverage off you and gives you more opportunities. And they brought in Sam Laporta. It's going to open things up too. Let's look at the rest of the Lions wide receiving depth chart, shall we? Strap in for this. We got my man Josh Reynolds hanging out, Marvin Jones, Antone Green, Trinity Benson, Khalif Raymond, Caton Thompson, Maurice Alexander, Tom Kennedy, Dylan Drummond, and Chase Cota. So we got a lot of guys who are going to be in the USFL or XFL in a couple years. And then we have Josh Reynolds, Marvin Jones, and Jameson Williams. I'm not worried about it. Good players elevate themselves. They elevate their games. Amon-Ra St. Brown has done nothing but get better in his 2 years in the NFL. I mean, look at last year, 1,161 yards and 6 touchdowns. You want that on your roster. I'm fine with paying that. Realistically, these new guys come in, you could probably get them for a little bit cheaper than wide receivers have in price, I would imagine. But sign me up. I'm on board with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Who knew at this point? We've been football fans a long time. We're like, I want all these Lions players. Like, that doesn't seem. Here we are.
They were top 5 offense last year, man, in yards and points, I'm pretty sure. So,
yeah.
If the defense figured it out, they would have definitely been a playoff team. I mean, you have to score 50 points a game in the first 6 weeks, it looks like, but they tried. They were there. They had a lot of games where they just lost by a field goal, it seemed like. Every single week I was looking at the red zone and, here goes the Lions, about to lose on a field goal, and they made it. He made a 75-yard field goal. I mean, it was like insane last year what was happening to them.
Kicking in a dome, that's what it'll do for you, man.
You got to switch it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, you made some great points with the additions. Gibbs is kind of like a like-for-like swap of DeAndre Swift and then Jameson Williams when he comes in. I wouldn't say he's going to be a volume guy. He's probably more of the deep threat. That's probably going to be even better for Amon-Ra St. Brown in opening up that the opposing defenses, making it a little softer for him as well. So you could argue that maybe his situation could actually be even better when Jameson Williams is back. So, yeah, Ali, should we move on to the next wide receiver? Obviously, we just touched on Jameson Williams.
Yeah, just because with Amon-Ra St. Brown, I ended up on that fantasy receipts page because I said that Amon-Ra St. Brown was the biggest sell in Dynasty last offseason. So that obviously didn't go very well. So we'll talk about the other wide receiver and tight end. So there's a couple of questions, starting with Jameson Williams. So you've been the hyped up man who's really barely seen any targets in the NFL and won't hit the field now until week 7. So are you two still believers in Jameson Williams, or would you rather cash in on him while his value is still relatively high? And then going with Sam Laporta, actually, let's just go with Williams to start off with. Are you two believers in Williams still?
I have absolutely hated how his seasons have started, man. You get caught gambling or doing something stupid. Something so stupid, you lose 6 games of your season. You already didn't have a good rookie year because you were injured and you were a gunner on punter for whatever reason. They spent all that draft capital on him to go be a gunner. I hate it so far. I'm absolutely destroyed. I love Jameson Williams when he was coming out. I thought he had so much potential on the deep threat and inside. Like, I thought that was going to be so great for Jared Goff as well. And I mean, that's another piece for Jared Goff that hasn't even been tapped into yet. But I've absolutely hated it. I think you can sell him if you're not super thrilled with what's going on so far. You have nothing to really believe in at this point. But if you watch the tape, you know how incredible of a player he is. He's a guy that can make plays. He's a guy that is just absolutely incredible. I can see it going either way. I can see owners just absolutely tired of it, but also I see the upside. So I'm kind of trying to still hang on and wait it out, because I think there is a good chance him and Amon-Ra are going to feed off each other. And I mean, they can't guard everybody in that offense. So I think it's still a good piece, but I can see where people are like, yeah, get me out of this situation. You can still sell pretty high. I still think that window is still there to do so.
Yeah. Sell. Wide receiver 26 on DLF. We'll call him the Drake London of the Detroit Lions because he's overhyped and he's done nothing. Drake London, your wide receiver 31 for last year, everybody. Round of applause. Let's look at who's going after him that I would rather have. Jerry Jeudy, Jordan Addison, Jahan Dotson, Deontay Johnson, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Mike Evans. These are guys that I will take over. I will trade Jameson Williams away for these players plus assets. Okay. Sometimes the best way to improve your team is to get rid of your best players or your most overvalued players. Chev's right. If you're playing special teams, unless it's a league that you get yardage for being a gunner or kick return yards, he had one catch last year for 41 yards, suspended the first 6 games of this year. What are you doing for me? I want him off my roster. I want certainty. I want safety. That's what I want on my team. So I love Jameson Williams, loves what he potentially brings to the table. But until we see it, I have to move on. You can always buy a player back at another time. Unless it's Justin Jefferson, then people are just out of their minds.
Yeah, to be honest, I was just like Chev in the fact that I really liked him as a prospect coming in. Ali, I know you were the same as well. We both really liked Jameson Williams, and you was kind of drafting him in your rookie drafts, knowing that this first year was going to be rough. But it's been worse than rough. It's been worse than what we even expected. Obviously, we knew we had to wait with the injury, but when he came back, we saw little glimpses, but never really holding it down towards the back end of the year. And then, like you mentioned, the fact that he's now gone and got himself suspended for another 6 games, it's just like, it's just hard to buy into the fact that James was going to be what we hoped, and we felt like we could wait and hold, and we were going to stick to the process of we like him as a prospect and what he can be. But we're now getting to the point where it's becoming really tough to keep backing on him. And like Mike mentioned, he's got to that point now in his value where it's been a rough start, but yet you can still trade him for these guys that are far more productive in the NFL, that you can get them plus an asset on top as well. It feels like this is a good time to maybe move off him. I think the hype's going to build, obviously, when the suspension's getting closer to being over and people are going to start buying back into him. So maybe that's the key time to move off him. But yeah, I'll just say that I'm probably less optimistic as what I was maybe when he came in as a prospect. Ali, are you the same as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only chance that you trade for him is if you're giving up if you're in a rebuild and you're giving up an Amari Cooper, a more aging wide receiver, and you're giving up him and getting Jameson Williams, knowing that he's not going to be on your roster for the first 6 games. I think that's the only way you trade for him. It's really annoying because we were both really high on what he can do, the speed. He's an absolute burner, and just really exciting, and we've just not seen any of it so far. So hurry up mid-season and we can see him on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Sam Laporta as well, Ali. Have you got a question for the guys on Sam Laporta?
Yeah, just a real quick one. He was surprised me really on how high they took him in the NFL draft, obviously before Michael Mayer went. So where does he rank in terms of your rookie tight end rankings? Have you been taking many shares of Laporta? Is he someone that you guys are interested in Dynasty, sort of taking that TJ Hockenson role in this offense?
I love him.
Absolutely. We love this guy at the Dynasty Rewind. But I think one of the main reasons why we really liked him is like his ADP was like 46th player off the board back when we were talking about him. So now that he's getting drafted so early, that sucks. It hurts my soul to watch him get drafted so early because I really wanted to grab him late and be that guy that can, make that pick worth it. Because we saw the potential. We saw that. And I had him 3rd at tight end. I had him like 0.14 in my like scouting behind Mayer, so pretty close to Mayer. Man, I love what he can do. He's a physical dude. He's a guy that if he gets the ball in his hands, he's going to run you over. He's going to do his best to get as many stinking yards as he can. And, best thing about him for me is he finds ways to get open all over the field. And he's a guy that can go up and make the big plays. So that's probably my favorite thing about him. He just finds ways to win. He's a smart route runner. He knows where the soft spots are in the defense. And that's really what I love about him. He just knows where to go. He's smart. He plays well. He's physical. Like, he's just a guy that is going to get you points. Now he's in offense with a bunch of dudes that are going to get you points. But I think, tight ends take a while. Expectations for me is, first few years might not be great, but that third year rolls around, things are going to start popping off for him, I think. I think he does find a TJ Hawkinson role. Good for TJ Hawkinson, too, going to the spot, just getting absolutely peppered with targets. But, yeah, we love Sam Laporta, big Sam Laporta guys.
Yeah, good for TJ Hawkinson going somewhere where he's going to lose in the first round of the playoffs every year. I like Sam Laporta. I have him graded out the same as Michael Mayer, Luke Musgrave, and Luke Schoonmaker. I know it's not pronounced Schoonmaker, but in Pennsylvania, that's how we would say the last name. So you should all be thanking us for watching Iowa's offense so you don't have to. Spencer Petras was terrible. He moved on. I think Iowa might have some semblance of a offense from this millennia. But Sam Laporta, fantastic guy. Chev, I actually disagree with you with one fact. I think he could be more relevant sooner than 3 years.
Sure.
They have a need there. Sure. And again, going back to their depth chart, just looking at it, after Laporta, it's Brock Wright, James Mitchell, who Nate and I were a fan of, and then 3 other guys that I'd never heard of. So I do think that there's potential that year one, he's maybe like a low to mid tight end 2, and then it's just going on from there. They thought very highly of him. He was a second-round draft pick. That means something. Draft capital matters. So does landing spot. So I'm all aboard the Sam Laporta train. I don't have any. I've only done 2 rookie drafts so far. I don't have any shares yet. This hasn't happened for me, but I'm going to keep trying for sure.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure you'll succeed because, like you said, I think we're all quite high on Laporta. So it's going to be great to see what he can do. And like you mentioned, Mike, I think it can be sooner than what maybe some people are expecting with that depth chart, especially at tight end. So with that, we better move on now to the Packers. Obviously, we've got to kick things off with the quarterback position. And for every year beyond this, we spoke about Aaron Rodgers, but finally we get to talk about a different quarterback. Jordan Love's finally getting his opportunity. Exactly. Thank God, after being selected in the first round, we're finally getting to see what he can do. It's been 3 years in the waiting. We've seen little glimpses of it. He's had his couple of opportunities here and there, and we've had different results when he has had his number called. But as I mentioned, with Rodgers being traded, he is now the locked-in starter for 2023. So just the burning question I think everybody's asking at the minute, in what would you consider a successful season for Jordan Love? Obviously, he was kind of selected as that developmental quarterback. He's had his time sat behind Aaron Rodgers now. So what would you consider a successful year for Jordan Love? And is this somebody that you'd be comfortable having as your QB2 in Superflex, or is that maybe a little bit too rich? Because just looking at his ADP is going around that quarterback 17 range. So you're likely having to get him as your QB2 in Superflex. So yeah, where are you at? What would you consider a success?
So for me, I think you probably drafted him late. So he's probably your quarterback 3 if you drafted him. I'd feel more comfortable with that than my quarterback 2. That being said, depending on how my roster shakes out, how I built it in a startup, you can make it work. For me, success would be like if he does 3,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, and like 8 interceptions, I'm going to be all on board with that. Hey, let's not forget, we haven't seen much in his limited time. Aaron Rodgers started a couple games here and there. Didn't look too great. Patrick Mahomes started that one game, and he was kind of They turned out fine. So I think Jordan Love's going to be fine. I do want to say I hate the fact that the Green Bay Packers are like, we had that 4-time NFL MVP. He could do it himself. New guy comes in. Oh, let's give him all the weapons. Like Aaron Rodgers, probably like, really, guys? Come on, man. I get it. If he wants out because of that, completely understand. But I'm on board the Jordan Love train by all means. I think give the guy a shot, right? And I'm glad that the Packers are doing it instead of just deciding to move on. I'm sure Chev's like, I wish they would have just signed someone else. Someone worse.
I am totally fine with this. As long as Aaron Rodgers is out of my life, he has absolutely tormented me for 15 years.
Owner of the Chicago Bears.
It was ugly, man. It's been so bad. He's a part owner of the Bears. Hopefully he buys in and does some building of a new stadium. But with Jordan Love, I'm not like super excited for him. It's a hard situation to come into. If Devontae Adams is there, I'd be a little bit more excited. You have a bunch of young wide receivers, a bunch of young guys that are coming into this offense, which is a little tough. That's why I think they're going to rely on the run a little bit more. I said I'd be happy if he threw 3,000 yards and just had more touchdowns and interceptions, because there's going to be a learning curve with the first year starting. Like, it's going to be a little tougher. I think he did the best decision he could have done. They didn't want to pick up his fifth-year option, so they signed him to like a cheaper deal. If I was him, I'm signing that thing right off the printer. When I print that thing is getting signed, because you haven't done anything yet. You really haven't had to do much to get this contract. So get your money while you can. If you have a bad season, you did all right. But, I think he's a good player, but I just have my worries that, he hasn't played much. Young team around him, like, how are they going to play this upcoming year? Is it going to be ground and pound and just hope we don't have to throw as much as we used to? And I think they wanted to do that in the first place, but they built around that defense a little bit more this last year as well. So I don't know. I am worried about Jordan Love. I'm not as high on him as everybody else. I wouldn't want him as my QB2. I'd be really worried if that was the point. QB3, I'm not upset, but I have my worries about Jordan Love. He's a guy that could get replaced, in my opinion, if something doesn't go well this year.
Could happen, for sure.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And you mentioned, obviously, that they brought in some weapons. Ali, this is kind of a British term, but you'd say it's brilliant shithousery by the Packers, obviously taking all these weapons when they've had Aaron Rodgers with no weapons, and now they're kind of saying a middle finger to Aaron Rodgers and let's get some weapons. But Chev, you made a great point. The weapons are young, they're unproven weapons, so maybe it's not as ideal situation as what you might hope for. Obviously, you look at guys like Bryce Young coming in and CJ Stroud, where they've got maybe that little bit more established wide receivers to throw to, whereas Jordan Love, I know obviously he's not a rookie, but he's inexperienced in the NFL, and he's now got to play with these young guys. But we're going to talk about some of the other guys, but there's some veterans in there that can definitely help him out, and some of the younger guys that have already played and showed us something in the NFL. So Ali, we'll go to you with your running back question.
Yeah, so talk about Aaron Jones. Seems to have been on the Packers forever now. If you do own Aaron Jones in Dynasty, he's getting up there. I think, what is he, 27 years old, gone 28? Are you looking to sell for what you can this offseason, or are you willing to hold on to him right now and let him age out on your roster? Looking at the contract, there's plenty of money still owed to him over the next 2 years. So is he still a good option in Dynasty, or does it depend on where you are in Dynasty? Are you a contender? Are you wanting Aaron Jones? Is he a buy candidate because he's cheap? So whereabouts are you with Aaron Jones?
Chev, what are you doing with Aaron Jones? Buying, selling, holding?
Hey, I like Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is a guy that's actually dominated me in fantasy football championships. It seems like every time I play him in the championship, he drops like 40, and it's incredible what he does. He's a Packers player too. That doesn't help, but I like him to start the season. If I have him and I'm a competitor, I'm really excited. I think, like I said, they're going to run the ball a good amount. I mean, he's a good pass catching back as well. So it's a good drop down option for Jordan Love, something safe for him to get into. If I have him, and I'm holding him until the season starts. I'm going to let that hype build for him in season, where he has a few big games, and then I might ship him off if I'm going to sell him. I don't think his value right now is like incredible. So once people see that, hey, he's playing pretty well, they're going to go attack and try to get him on their offense for fantasy. So that's probably what I would do. I wouldn't sell him now. I'd wait a little bit, but I would be probably pretty fine letting him die on my roster if I'm a contender, because I think he is going to get a lot of touch. He's going to get some volume this year, and they're not slouches on the offensive line. They can do some work there still. So I think he's still a good player. I would try to sell him honestly. After a few games and be done with him, since he is 27, about to be 28. I would get rid of him, but there's still some good years I think left in his contract for him to play well for fantasy football.
Yeah, I think the question is, Chev's absolutely right. If you're selling him now, what are you going to get for him? He actually is 28 already, so even worse, 28.3 according to DLF. You have to hold until the season starts. and then you try to get a younger running back. Like if he has a couple good games right off the gate and you can get him for like Rashad White plus, I'd be comfortable with something like that. But you're not going to get much for him right now. You're just not. I mean, because if you try to move him right now, 28-year-old running back in a timeshare with AJ Dillon with a first-time starting quarterback, huge question marks. People are going to be like, I'll give you a third-round pick for him. And at that price, you just put him in your starting lineup and you hope for the best. So hold until you can sell for more is what I would say to do. But I do like the talent. Just got to see it with Jordan Love.
So just a quick follow-up. So which of the two running backs do you prefer in Dynasty? Is it Aaron Jones or is it AJ Dillon, slightly younger guy?
I guess AJ Dillon long-term, Aaron Jones. I don't know. Sometimes the right answer is neither, to be honest with you. Look elsewhere. Like when Zach Ertz was with the Eagles, people be like, Ertz or Goddard, and I'd be like, just go somewhere else. I don't know. Sometimes neither is the best answer. But I think AJ Dillon, for me right now, would be the answer long-term overall.
Yeah, no, and obviously it's a bit of an unknown with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, but I did mention he's like the only real established receiving weapon in this offense. We've touched upon there's a lot of inexperience here, and Aaron Jones is the one that has actually been there and done it. And like you mentioned, Chev, he's shown that he can be a capable pass catcher. So if Jordan Love does fall in love with him, excuse the term love and love there, but if he does fall in love with him, then yeah, maybe there could be something good there, especially in PPR leagues. But like you mentioned, it feels like a real win now move if you have got Aaron Jones. And I think if you're in anything apart from a win now position, you've got to be looking to move off. And I probably do like what you two both mentioned in maybe just wait a little bit, wait to those first few games and hope that he has those big games and then maybe look to move off to an RB needed team. But with that, we better move on to the wide receivers. And as I mentioned, it's quite a young core of wide receivers, but there's one guy that really stood out last year coming in as a rookie, had that really impressive stretch between week 10 and week 13, averaging 23 fantasy points per game. He's averaging 2 touchdowns per game during that stretch. So he had a nose for the end zone as well. But then it seemed to cool down a little bit, and at a crucial stage as well for us fantasy players in that fantasy playoff stretch. He kind of didn't really do too much, and it was a shame, obviously, going from the amazingness of weeks 10 to 13 to what he gave us in the fantasy playoffs. But I'm interested to know, we've talked about Jordan Love, and obviously now he's going to have him as his starting quarterback. Is that a big negative for you in terms of Christian Watson? Are you viewing him more as what we saw in that rookie season, or do you think maybe we need to temper expectations and put together, obviously Jordan Love being his quarterback going from Aaron Rodgers, he's in our self here, just looking at his ADP, he's going super early around that wide receiver 20 mark. Is that too much for you right now, given the small sample size and obviously changing in situation now that he's had?
I think it actually, Jordan Love coming in benefits him because Jordan Love doesn't have any of the preconceived notions like Aaron Rodgers did, where he didn't like the younger wide receivers. Jordan Love probably spent a lot of time throwing to Christian Watson last offseason in camp. Christian Watson not coming in as a starter right away, so that's probably helpful. Personally, for me, I'm going to kind of lump this in with the next guy. I'm sorry. I'm going to move on from Christian Watson. I would move Christian Watson for Terry McLaurin plus, and then I would draft Jaden Reed later. Is probably how I would do it. Right now, he's the wide receiver I want because of Christian Watson's inconsistency. We saw this in North Dakota State. We knew he was going to be a raw prospect. I think he has a high ceiling. Yes. I think he also has a dangerously low floor too. Had Jaden Reed come out last year after the 2021 season when he had a killer year and Michigan State had a really good year, faltered off last season, we'd have been talking about Jaden Reed being drafted much higher. Well, maybe not much higher given how good last year's wide receiver class was, but I think he would have probably pushed to be drafted a little higher than he was. Jaden Reed's a good football player, played at a bigger program than Christian Watson did. And I know that doesn't always matter, but the preparation's there, just knowing how to carry yourself as a football player. These things that are taught better at bigger schools. They just are. So I would move on from Christian Watson, try to get Jaden Reed plus. You could get a guy like Terry McLaurin, a Keenan Allen, something like that, and draft picks to draft Jaden Reed. So you get the best of both worlds. That's what I would do. He's too inconsistent for me. But yeah, still excited to see what he does this year.
Yeah, I'm looking to sell as well. I just don't trust it. You're averaging 23 fantasy points, 2 touchdowns per game. Like, that is incredible. I'm selling you. Wide receiver 19 price point. I'm out. See you later. Thank you for what you did for my team in 1 year. Good luck in the future. Yep. But yeah, I'm selling him right away because his value probably is going to be at the highest it's going to be at, in my opinion. I just think that offense is going to be a little run heavy, like I've been saying. But I just think at that point, like, he's doing so stinking good. The hype is so high on him. It's time. It's time to get rid of him and say good luck, brother.
Yeah, no, he's a guy that I personally was never super in on either. So when the discussions have come about of should you be looking to sell him, I've always been somebody that's wanted to move off him if I have had him in any leagues. And I think that the reason why his price point seems to be so high is I think maybe people aren't as in on Jayden Reed as what maybe they should be. Matt, you've just mentioned that you really like him, but I feel like a lot of people weren't super high on him as a prospect, and they kind of feel like this is a layup for Christian Watson, the fact that they picked Reed when there was other wide receivers on the board that maybe they had higher in their rookie rankings. But yeah, I agree with you. Obviously, we're going to talk about Jayden Reed in a little minute, but I think people see that as a positive for Christian Watson, whereas I just think it could be a negative. I agree with you, Mike, that I think Jayden Reed could be the wide receiver one in this offense as early as his rookie season. I think he could be the guy that could be the most reliable. But Ali, I'll pass it to you because I know obviously you want to ask your questions about Jayden Reed to the guys.
Yeah, just quickly on Watson. Jordan Love came in week 12 and threw 9 passing attempts. 6 of them went. 9 passes for 113 yards, and 6 of them went to Christian Watson for 110 yards. So he clearly likes to target Christian Watson.
There you go. There's your sell window. Be like,
exactly
Christian Watson. Look at this. There you go. Small sample size, but it's there. Let's sign the deal.
Better than Devontae Adams.
See? So, there you go. Look at that. The salesman over there. I love it.
Devontae could never.
He wouldn't.
Exactly. What is that as a target share? Anyway, Jayden Reed. So just want to get your thoughts on Jayden Reed. Were you fans of Jayden Reed pre-draft? Are you fans of him now? He got much better draft capital than what I expected. And then there's clearly, for me, I see there's an opportunity there with a no real established wide receiver one. Obviously, we've just mentioned about Christian Watson. So, yeah, your thoughts on Jayden Reed?
Mike, it's all you, brother.
Love him. Loved him. I thought he was coming out last year, so I actually started scouting him preliminarily. Is that right? Whatever. Last season, I was a little upset when he decided to go back to school, but I get it. Hey, look, get your degree, get that no money, do it up. I can't blame these guys. Mm-hmm. We saw last year what Romeo Doubs did early in the year. We got a lot of targets. Then he got hurt. He kind of tapered off a little bit. There's no reason to think that Jayden Reed can't come in and be somewhat relevant right off the rip. Quintez Cephas in his first game as a Detroit Lion got 10 targets. It was all downhill from there, but still, it happened. These rookies, they can come in. They can be relevant right away. Jayden Reed could do pretty much everything. Good contested catch. He can separate. He can stretch the field. He could run short and intermediate routes. He could run screens. He could do everything pretty well, and I think he's going to be a really good addition to the Green Bay Packers offense. And they got some tight ends, too. I know we're going to be talking about them soon, so I'll just wait on that. I won't go too far ahead. But I love Jayden Reed. Love him.
Yeah, and I think he's a good player and where you're picking him up at, too. I think he's a good value there. I think he has a chance to do some damage in the offense if they can get that offense rolling in the passing game. Like, he is a good wide receiver that, I didn't think he was going to get drafted that early. Props to Mike and Nate. They really loved him early on and stuck with him, and he got drafted early. So good kudos to those guys. But I did not see it happening that early. But he landed in a good spot where they don't really truly have that wide receiver one. I mean, Christian Watson played well last year, but that could all change this year, in my opinion. I think Jayden Reed is in a good spot, especially for where you're drafting him at this upcoming year fantasy drafts.
And he's the wide receiver 9 on DLF right now in the rookie class. Mm-hmm. So, and there's guys that I would take him over that are ahead of him, such as Jonathan Mingo, Rashee Rice. I would take him over those guys personally. I think Rashee Rice is going to, I don't want to say a bust, but he gets that bump because he goes to Kansas City. I'll take Jayden Reed over him. I think he's more talented. Rashee Rice is physical. He doesn't separate great, and his hands aren't the best either. Kind of important when you're a wide receiver. Not sure if everyone knows that, but you got to be able to catch it. Like they also, the Packers drafted Dontavian Wicks, like the 5th round or something from Virginia. Guy could separate. He could track the ball well. He had no clue what to do when the ball got there. And it's like, why are you could have gotten him as a UDFA, but hey, they also drafted Sean Clifford. So
R.I.P. Bob.
That was a great time.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are high on Jane Reed. As good friend Dynasty Island, he's really high on Jane Reed. He's got him as his wide receiver 5. Ali, when we did that rookie startup, he was happy to pull the trigger at the back end of the first round. Obviously, he knows he doesn't have to make that kind of move, but that's where he values him as a rookie. So I feel like there's a lot of people in this space that are really in on Jaden Reed, and I can see why the potential opportunity he could have in this offense looks to be great. And as I say, I think he could make a push to be the wide receiver 1 in his rookie season. So yeah, definitely excited by him. But we've mentioned briefly that they've added a couple more weapons in the NFL draft, and they brought in 2 tight ends. It was funny, obviously. Luke Musgrave was the first selected, and I remember being really excited by that because he's a guy that I really liked. Maybe a lot of people weren't talking about him because he had that limited sample size in college, obviously dealing with the injuries. So he was like one of those sleeper tight ends, and as I say, I love the landing spot. But then the Packers went and drafted another tight end not long after and brought in a second one. So I'm just interested to know, a simple question, because I know some people are saying that Tucker Kraft might be the tight end that you maybe want to target in fantasy. So where do you two sit on these tight ends, and which one would you prefer in Dynasty?
I'm going to say this. The stupidest thing I ever heard in my life was when someone likened this to when the Baltimore Ravens drafted Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews. Stop it. Tucker Kraft is Drew Sample. He's a blocking tight end. Everyone's like, he's so athletic. They're helmet scouting because Dallas Goedert came from South Dakota State. Yeah. Stop. He's clunky. He doesn't even turn his body well. He's not very athletic. I didn't see it. I mean, I'm not a professional scout, but I didn't see it. Luke Musgrave is the answer. He's the guy I want. Luke Musgrave is a guy that's going to get split out. He's going to get moved around in the formations. Tucker Kraft is going to be the inline guy. In my opinion, that's the way it should be. I don't know why they drafted Tucker Kraft. You could have gotten a Tucker Kraft clone as a UDFA. There was guys out there. You know what I mean? I would prefer if they would have taken Zach Kunstlater, who's a good buy low right now. He's going as a UDFA. The Jets really like him. There you go. Everyone, get Zach Kuntz on your roster, stash him. So your taxi squad with tight ends always. But I'm going with Luke Musgrave, much more athletic. I had him graded the same as Sam Laporta. So there you go. Everyone likes Sam Laporta. There's your knockoff Sam Laporta, everybody. Draft Musgrave.
Yeah, I like Musgrave too. But the thing with Kraft is you're literally getting him for free, because he's not being drafted very high at all. Like, you're getting him as a 5th round, maybe even undrafted player in your rookie draft, because they did draft Musgrave. I mean, there's yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you can literally get this guy for free and be just fine with him not playing on your roster ever, because you didn't have to give up anything for him. So that's kind of where I'm at with Kraft. Like, to me, I saw a little bit of athleticism at him. I'm not as low on him as Mike is apparently, but I think there's something there. I think he could do something, but like I said, I'm getting him 5th round, late 4th round. Like, I'm paying nothing for this guy. I'm not expecting him to light the world on fire. If you're paying for Musgrave, you're expecting him to come in and go to work pretty quickly on your fantasy team, because you're having to spend the draft capital. But I like Musgrave too. I wish he just didn't get injured as much. That's my only real worry, is the dude is never on the field. Like, the film I found for him was 8 plays. And after that, it was like a minute long. I was like, all right, he looked pretty good, I guess. It was like a highlight. It was like a highlight.
It's an easy scout, man. That's what I love. That stuff. Hey, look, here's the thing. Tucker Kraft is currently the tight end 7 on DLF. He's going ahead of Brenton Strange, who I'm not a huge fan of, even though I'm a Penn State fan, but he got 2nd round draft capital. Will Mallory goes in the 5th round. He's tight end 9 to the Colts. They have a need there. I think he's going to get more opportunity than Tucker Kraft, and Zach Kuntz is the tight end 10 right now. These are all guys that I would rather take a chance on stashing, because I think the opportunity is going to be there. And I understand that a lot of times dynasty evaluators say talent over opportunity. If you don't get the opportunity to showcase your talent, it doesn't matter. Also, Darnell Washington at tight end 5 is too high. I think he's going to be primarily a blocking tight end. If you look at the Steelers depth chart, he's 6th in line to get targets. I just don't see it happening. So, you could definitely stash some guys later and let other people draft. Like Tucker Kraft is ADP. It's going in the mid 4th round. Other guys there I'd rather take a chance on. He's one of those guys where if I'm wrong, I'm okay about that. But I highly doubt that I will be. I just don't think the opportunity is going to be there in the Green Bay Packers offense.
Yeah, I just wonder if maybe they took a craft as kind of that insurance policy on Luke Musgrave. Obviously, we know that they let the Titans, that they had Robert Tunyon, they let him go, Mercedes Lewis, they didn't bring him back. So it kind of felt like maybe this is just a bit of an insurance policy. But I fully agree with you guys. I think putting health to one side, if he can stay healthy, Luke Musgrave, I think he's the Titan for me. I'd rather own. Obviously, you've got to pay that little bit more premium in Dynasty, but yeah, I think he's an exciting guy for me in fantasy and moving forward. But with that brings us to the end, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, it's a pleasure as always. As I said at the top of the show, we love having you guys on, and it's lived up to the expectation, and it's been a lot of fun. So before we let you get off, just let everyone know where they can find you. Anything you want to plug before you jump off,
Chef?
Yeah, I'll just say, we complained about the teams we got. We were totally joking. We loved coming on this. We love coming on at 7 a.m. to talk about these teams because it is such a great cause. I mean, mentally, you have to be there. You have to find a way to get yourself into a good spot, whether that's through counseling or just having more free time to yourself, finding those ways to where you can be mentally happy. And for me, I was mentally drained, mentally ill from working at a job that required me to work so many stinking hours and just no time to myself. You have to find time to where you can have fun, where you can just be away from everything and just relax, because I wasn't doing that and I was in a bad place. And, it affected me mentally, physically. So talk to somebody, man. Don't be afraid. We're all going through stuff, especially with COVID. I know it seems so far away, but that stuff still haunts people these days. And, talk to somebody. I know everybody at the Rewind, Pork's a big guy on it, where if you need somebody, talk to him. Send him a tweet, send him a message, DM, whatever you need to do. I think we're all the same at the Dynasty Rewind. We want to help you guys in fantasy, but if we can help you in any mental capacity, any way to help you be a better human, a better version of yourself, we want to help you in the best possible way. So that's all I'm going to plug. Everybody struggles, so don't feel like you're the only one. We all go through some things. Talk to people. I know Mike's wife does some work in this as well. Yeah,
she's a therapist or counselor or something. And I agree, if you want to reach out to anybody, go ahead, reach out to Porkman. Not me. I'm just kidding. Reach out to any one of us. Gentlemen, thank you for having us. If you want more of us, you can follow us on Twitter at Dynasty Rewind or subscribe to our YouTube page. We are also available anywhere that you hear podcasts. New podcasts drop Wednesday and Friday. So check us out. I think you'll like it.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cheers for coming on.
Top guys. So thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.
See you guys next year.
Yes. Take it easy, boys.
Cheers, guys. Take care.
You guys.
And with that, we'll bring Kevin, who's fully refreshed now, I assume. But before I jump off, I'll just quickly say a huge thank you to everyone that has donated. I had a quick look while we were talking then, and we're over 50 donations now. We're pushing for that £1,000 milestone. So a big thank you to everyone that has donated. The donation link will stay up until the end of June. So you can find that on our Twitter page at Fantasy Wildcard. Just search that on Twitter and look for the Streamathon there as well. So thank you for supporting Mind. And guys, I'll let you carry on with the two amazing guests that you got lined up.
Cheers, Matt.
Cheers, Matt.
Ta-da.
See you shortly.
Best two.
The best two. We are going to say that several times today, but it is true. Kev, are you feeling nice and refreshed?
Absolutely, yeah. It's absolutely blazing here. Sun's out. I saw Matt in the hoodie. Then I think I might be putting the hoodie on a little bit later because when the sun's not on you, it is a bit cool. But yeah, feel really refreshed and ready to crack on and smash through the North.
Love it. Yeah, we're going to enter a powerhouse of division, the AFC North. So yeah, let's do it. We're going to talk about the Bengals and the Browns. We've got two incredible guests to bring on from the Dynasty Nerds. We've got Marvin and we've got Jason. So boys, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you guys so much for having us. Always love that you guys put this event together. It means a lot for me and I know for a lot of people that that struggle with mental health, and it's so important. So I appreciate you guys for setting this up. And I will say I agree that you guys are two of the better wildcard hosts. I'm always excited that I get to come on here with you two. I'm just kidding. I love Matt, but truthfully thankful to be here.
I love it.
I would echo the sentiments. It's great to be with you. I'm excited to make my first appearance here on the stream. I've been listening to your content throughout what's morning for me, what's afternoon for you guys, and you've just been crushing it. So I'm excited to jump on and be with you guys today.
No, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your morning with us. Yeah, really appreciative. And with that, Kev, over to you with the Bengals.
Yeah, landed in a great spot with the Bengals here, and what a place to start. The man himself with his headband on, Joe Burrow looking absolutely fly. 2022 was a true breakout season for him. He was QB4 in fantasy points per game. We know that real life perspective is pretty awesome, but it was nice to see him take that step in fantasy as well. More rushing output than I expected, partly due to 5 touchdowns on the ground, but currently QB4 at Keep Trade Cut ahead of other guys like Lamar, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence. So I want to get you guys' thoughts on Burrow at his current cost, QB4. Would you be taking him ahead of those guys I mentioned, or would you say that there is someone that's going slightly higher, either the same tier as well? So Lamar, Herbert, Trevor Lawrence. Have you got Burrow above all of those, or are they in the same tier?
Yeah, I can jump in here first. I do think they're all kind of in that tier behind, kind of I guess what we'd consider the big 3 quarterbacks in Mahomes and Hurts and Allen. But I personally would take Burrow ahead of all of those guys. I think maybe Lamar is the only exception because of what we've already seen, and his upside can be, right? He can be the QB1 on any given year because of that rushing upside. But to your point, Burrow had a career high 8.7% rushing share. That was good for QB8. I mean, there's still a pretty big gap to what like Hurts is doing, but that's still pretty impressive for someone who's in a really pass heavy offense. And that's what honestly I just like about Burrow's situation. The wide receivers, the continuity, Zach Taylor, they're 3rd in the league last year in neutral situation passing rate in the red zone. So they want to pass the ball in high value situations. That's why he had a breakout year. And so I expect more of that again this year with a lot of the same pieces coming back. So to me, he is easily a top 5 dynasty quarterback. Would happily take him at QB4. But like I said, Lamar is the one that I'm kind of wondering if he could kind of creep back up into that elite tier.
And I think I'm pretty much on the same page as you, Marvin. I mean, I think if you draft Burrow at QB4, you're pretty much drafting him at his ceiling or his max capacity. Sure, he may climb into that top 3, but you're probably drafting him for about his max. And that's usually frowned upon from a dynasty perspective. But in this case, I have no issue with it. I mean, I think you're getting him at a fair value there. I think, he's proven himself as a top asset. He's got some of the best weapons around him in the game right now. So strategically, I don't think there's a lot of risk to taking him there. Now, for me, I'm a value scrounger. So if we were in a startup, I probably am trying to look to trade down a spot or 2. I'm okay with Lamar there. I'm even okay with Herbert. And if you can get Herbert plus, for in exchange for the pick, that would net you Burrow. I think I'd be okay with that. But if Burrow's your guy and you feel strongly about him, I have no objection at all to you taking him as the 4th overall.
Yeah, completely agree. And Kev, just passing it to you. I take it Burrow's in your second tier. How big is that second tier for you? Does it include the likes of Lamar? Is he in that second tier with Herbert, Trevor Lawrence? How big is that? And would you be looking to move down in the startup if you were, say, pick 4 to get one of those guys?
I mean, first of all, yeah, it's quite a big tier for me. I think there's about 6 or 7 in that tier. I think, depending on your league format, you can tell a story for different ones. So, like, if it's touchdown heavy, passing touchdown heavy, obviously guys like Burrow, maybe Herbert are going to be at the top. I think 4-point passing touchdown leagues, I do tend to lean upside. So this might be spicy, but I've got Lamar as my 4 and I've got Fields as my 5, which I know you don't have to pay that, but they're at the top of my tier just based on if everything hits, they're going to give me an advantage over the people that have got maybe your Burrows, your Herberts, your Daks, etc. So yeah, I don't have to pay that price for them. But it's like anything. You don't really want to be paying at the top of the tier, like Jason mentioned. If you can slide down a little bit, pick up a bit of value scrounge, then that is ideal.
And one follow-up for Marvin and for Jason is there a world where Joe Burrow gets into that top tier with the big three, or do you really see this as his ceiling?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think with I think just the gap in we talked a little bit about that rushing upside that kind of elevates some of the guys in that top tier, and Mahomes kind of being in a very efficient, very effective pass heavy offense as well. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden we see him kind of creep into, in that higher end dynasty ADP, but I do see right now that's like Jason said. I agree that it is kind of his ceiling. They'd have to take a massive step forward, and either him taking a lot more of those rush attempts, which are valuable for fantasy. I don't see that happening, or them being even more efficient than they already are, and which they're already up there. So it's hard to envision like a scenario where he could really take that next step, unless he, unless something massive happens, which I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but he's still very much, like you said, like a top tier quarterback that I'm fine taking. It's just I don't see him taking that next step into the clear cut QB1 or QB2 in Dynasty.
Yeah, I would say, in my opinion, I mean, this is we're just giving our opinions here, but I think, of the top three, I would say one of them would have to take a step back in order for Burrow to ascend into that top tier versus him doing anything more on the field to ascend, based on performance, because he's basically, I mean, if you look at last year's rushing stats that you mentioned in the question, I don't see him getting, that's probably as most that you could ever expect out of him in a year. And so to expect that he would give you any more than that is probably foolhardy. So I think he's probably right about where he ought to be valued. And, we'll see. But, like I said, I think maybe, Mahomes or Hurts or one of those guys takes a step back. Then sure, Burrow could make a leap. But I don't see it based on anything that he could do on the field.
Yep, completely agree. We'll move on to the running back position, and a guy that has been incredibly productive the last few years in Joe Mixon. Faded away a little bit to the back of last year with them going more pass happy. But if you do hold Mixon, if you're a contender in 2023, are you still happy with Joe Mixon as one of your top running back options? And then with them drafting Chase Brown, do you see him coming in and having much of the workload this season?
So I can jump in on this one first, if that's okay. For me, Mixon's, I think, one of the trickiest players, to evaluate this offseason because of the obvious off the field things that are going on with him. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Drew Davenport on Twitter, but he's actually he's legal counsel, and he's also heavy into fantasy. So he's great in these types of situations. He gives a lot of like insider baseball kind of intel. I was reading a recent thread that he had out about the police department in Cincinnati. They refiled their criminal charge of aggravated menacing in the beginning of April. So he feels that, for them to refile that charge, they must have a pretty significant case and a lot of evidence against him. Obviously, that's one of the things that makes him so inflammatory and so difficult to place value on right now. Now, couple that with his well-documented incidences of public misconduct as a college athlete before he was even drafted, it's fair to wonder whether the NFL intercedes here, under the auspices of their personal conduct policy, regardless of how the trial and the legal situation works out, because it's not unprecedented for them to have done that. Just based on the public perception of the player and how he's affecting the badge, as they say. He's also got a $12.8 million cap hit for this season, which has, earlier in the season created some speculation and uncertainty about his future in Cincinnati. The front office actually seemed to fan those flames a little bit at the combine when they were asked about his future, and kind of gave a lukewarm response about whether he was part of their long-term plan. Now, Zach Taylor more recently spoke out and said that he's supporting Mixon and they believe in him, and, the types of things that you would expect to hear from an organization. But, it's fair to wonder, is that just trying to prop him up for trade value at this point? It's hard, everybody plays these mind games in the offseason. So I do like Chase Brown quite a bit. I think he's going to complement, the powerful Bengals offense quite nicely. If I'm a contender, I think I'm reluctant to sell Mixon because he's at probably about the lowest point that he could possibly be right now. So what are you going to get back for him? but I'm also trying to make sure I reinforce that positional group. I don't think especially as a contender, you can't go into the season counting on him as your top back. I mean, if he's part of your core, that's fine. But I don't think I would look to be a buyer on him either. I think I'm just in a hold pattern if I own him, and I'm kind of letting somebody else kind of feel that headache if I'm on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I completely agree there, Jason. I just can't envision them, outside of the off-field issues that you outlined. I just don't see them keeping Mixon long term, considering, like you said, the cap it that he has. They could save 10 million this year if they cut him, I think, roughly, and next year as well. And so when you have guys like Joe Burrow and T. Higgins up for extensions, and you have Logan Wilson on their defensive side that they need to extend as well, you have to prioritize some of these positions. You can't re-sign them all. And I think the three guys I mentioned are arguably more valuable for that team. And so, when you have someone like Chase Brown, who I'm not the biggest fan of, I think there are aspects of his game that I like. But 5-year running backs that are drafted on day 3 don't usually hit at a high rate. It's usually around that 9-10%. So something to keep in mind. I wouldn't be surprised if they run it with Chase Brown if they do cut Mixon, and then maybe draft another running back in next year's class, which has a couple of solid names that could be there in the second round for them. Similar to Mixon a few years ago. So I do think he's the odd man out in this situation, beyond just the off-field issues. And then you couple that as well, add that on to it. I think his days in Cincinnati are likely numbered, which, is unfortunate. He's been great for fantasy, but that's, I think, when off-field issues happen, I think, teams have to make that decision, and it's likely going to happen. So, all that to say, I wouldn't be comfortable with him as my RB1 in Dynasty at all.
No, and Kev, have you got much exposure to Mixon in terms of Dynasty? Because we have previously been big fans of Mixon for what he can produce. And then Chase Brown, you've been taking much Chase Brown in rookie drafts.
Yeah, I think I've got a fair bit of Mixon. I reckon if he stays out of cuffs, then he's going to be absolutely a massive value. I think the workload wise, he's fantastic. Yes, there is guys like Chase Brown, Chris Evans, Trayvon Williams, etc. But I think if he does avoid JL or whatever, then he's going to be a great value. He's going to be an RB1. He's in an amazing offense. I think how the market views Samaj AP right now is as the best running back ever. Him leaving actually creates work for Mixon with how everyone's talking him up. But we do like Chase Brown at Fantasy Wildcard. I think he's an interesting guy. But like I say, day 3 guys are always long shots. It's a pipe dream more than anything. But yeah, I think Mixon, if he does avoid that uncertain situation, is going to be a great 1-year play.
I would just add too. I mean, I know they're not attractive names from a dynasty standpoint, but the free agent market is pretty well stocked with some guys floating around out there too. Like got Kareem Hunt, you got Fournette, you've got Zeke Elliott. Those guys are just out on the street right now. And if you're the Bengals and you're looking to contend for a Super Bowl, and you can sign those guys for fairly cheap, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see one of those guys come in as competition in the summertime. And that then, makes Mixon even more expendable because they've got, a reliable vet in there to pair with Chase Brown. So I know I already mentioned that you probably don't want to sell Mixon right now because his value's at a low point, but his value could get even lower, I suppose, if one of those guys, finds themselves in town.
Indeed, completely agree. We'll go from an uncertain running back room to a absolutely loaded wide receiver room. There's only one guy we can start off with. So over to you, Kev.
Yeah, it's great talking about these Bengals players, isn't it? Talking the cream of the crop here, but Jamar Chase, clear elite tier at wide receiver, him and Jefferson. A lot of people have Jefferson above Chase, but still same tier. He's had a great start to his career, wide receiver 5 and 6 in fantasy points per game last 2 seasons. I think there's maybe even bigger upside in the future with T. Higgins being a free agent. I think with Chase, he's a round 1 startup guy. But in existing leagues, I don't see many trades involving Jamar Chase. So I'm going to throw a scenario out to you both. You've got Joe Burrow to get the stack with Chase. It's going to cost you 3 future firsts to acquire him. Are you paying that, or is it a player and pick deal that you prefer if you're going after Chase?
Yeah, I'll weigh in here real quick. I mean, if I had to pay that price, I think I'd be extremely tempted, and that says a lot about Jamar Chase and what he is as a player and his impact for your dynasty team. Honestly, though, I think I would do it just for that stack, because you think about, in dynasty, you can be so focused on picks that the chances that those hit depending on who you pick and like how the draft pool that you look at, it's not. Having someone as surefire as Jamar Chase can change the trajectory for your dynasty team. So I'm fine paying that. I do think it's on the higher end. I mean, if I could like find a way to get like 2 firsts in there instead of that, and a second instead of that third, I'd happily do that. On the other end though, like as someone, if you have Chase, what I think in my opinion is like, I don't ever want to trade that guy, even if I'm rebuilding, unless I'm like struggling so heavily with depth where I can't put together a lineup at all. Then I'm keeping Chase because he's going to be around for 7 more years. He's only 23 years old at high peak level of performance. I'd hope at some point for my dynasty team in those 7 years, I'll be contending, and then Chase will be leading the way for me. So, if I have him, and this is, I think, the conversations we're all having in our dynasty teams, no one wants to trade away Chase, but if that's the price, I think I'd be tempted to do it. I'd be fine doing it. Because man, the impact that he has is so drastic for your team, where he could just change the course of a matchup with one play. You don't have many guys that can do that, right? And so at 23 years old. So yeah, man, top tier player. Wish I had him in any of my dynasty leagues, but I don't. So, and I've tried to acquire him.
So I guess I'll be the counterpoint here. I mean, not to disagree, but this is just my personal philosophy. I'm a pick hoarder type of guy, and so maybe at my own peril. But 3 first just is so steep to me. I mean, I understand he's an elite talent. I know there's a definite allure to pairing him with Burrow in the scenario that you painted, but I mean that price. I mean, frankly, what's to say one of those first don't end up becoming Marvin Harrison Jr. next year, or a player of that ilk, and then you've got Marvin Harrison Jr. plus 2 firsts for Jamar Chase. I would do that deal every day. So, I mean, you're gambling on that. You don't know. It's not a certainty. It could be the last pick of the first round. You just don't know. But I guess my philosophy for dynasty has always, I try to build through the draft. You try to just build through those young assets, and that there's a lot of speculation to that. So you had better be good at it if you're going to play that way. But if you trade away 3 future firsts, that really stunts your ability to do that and to take that approach. So I would probably be out at that price point, but I don't fault anybody that wants to dive in there either.
It's just a guy that you just don't see many trades where Jamar Chase has moved in terms of dynasty, because people aren't willing to pay that right now, and people aren't wanting to sell, as you've both mentioned. So we'll move on to another wide receiver who's a real top dynasty wide receiver. So yeah, T. Higgins, is he someone that you're still interested in drafting early in startups? It's obviously coming up to that contract renewal point. Do you think that they were able to re-sign T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow in the next couple of years? And then he sits alongside likes of Devontae Smith, Drake London, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith and Jigba in terms of ADP. Whereabouts do you have him ranked amongst those 4?
I can jump in here first. Obviously, Cincinnati is going to be challenged to get Higgins under the cap with Chase and Burrow, and even Mixon that we spoke about earlier. Maybe they find a way to massage the numbers and keep that trio together, the 2 pass catchers and Burrow. But frankly, I'm not really as concerned with that when it comes to my evaluation of him as a dynasty asset. I think if he stays, he obviously performs perhaps the league's best receiving tandem with Chase in the situation that he's in now. And he's got familiarity in Cincinnati, which you like. But if he leaves, he's still going to be a 25-year-old receiver with top skills, and he's going to be in his prime. He's going to have the freedom to hand select where he goes as far as a landing spot. So it's not like he's going to end up in a terrible situation, because he's going to, unless he opts for money, which I guess is a possibility. But, you would think he would pick at least a serviceable situation to walk into. So, I mean, I like Higgins quite a bit. I value him probably adjacent to DK Metcalf in that list that you rattled off there, but I would probably put him above all of the other options there. I mean, I just think he has that type of talent, and especially if he stays with the Bengals. I mean, I really like the tandem that he forms with Chase and Burrow in the backfield.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that it'll be interesting to see how they kind of fit all those guys into their cap space, and I think that's where they'll have to make some tough decisions with Mixon, being one of them. Tyler Boyd is off the books after this year, I believe. So there's some cap space that's going to be freed up there. I don't envision them bringing him back unless they let Higgins go, which it's just hard to see them let go of a guy who's so integral to that offense. And you see what he did last year. I know he had a couple of games where he left, multiple games where he left with injury, but in games where he played, at least 50% of the snaps, he had 23% of the targets, 34% of the air yards, which is awesome to see. And he was the wide receiver 19 in expected points. Couple that with an efficient offense, he's borderline wide receiver, high-end wide receiver 2, with the upside to be a wide receiver 1. And, that's where if he stays with the Bengals, I think there's maybe that cap on what he could be. But if he goes anywhere else, that he has the talent to be that wide receiver 1. So I'm in the of these guys that you listed, I think he's right there for me with DK Metcalf and Devontae Smith, kind of in that, that I guess there'd be like borderline wide receiver 1s, high end wide receiver 2s for dynasty. And but I'm happy to grab T Higgins because the situation he's in right now is great. And I find it hard to believe he'll go to a place where he can't thrive as well. So I'm fine with him, regardless of what happens in free agency for him.
Yeah, I love that. And Kev, for you, would you prefer T Higgins to re-sign with Cincinnati, or would you prefer that he moves away for his overall ceiling in Dynasty if you did hold him?
Yeah, I actually think that he will re-sign in Cincinnati. I think that's the best place for him. With like the guys mentioned, there's potential guys that are going to leave the offense. Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon's near the end as well. He's going to end up in jail soon. We're going to come on to a tight end who I don't think's great, but yeah, I think that is the best place for him. In terms of the 5 players you mentioned, I'd have him slap bang in the middle. I think if he goes elsewhere, he can handpick his spot, which for he openly plays Dynasty and he wants to land on like a Chiefs or something, but there is that doubt, isn't there, that he'll just take the money and make away with it. It was a 2nd round pick in the draft, so maybe he wants to cash in. But yeah, I think he'll stay. I think that's great news. I think if he does stay as well, he's just really rock solid mid-range wide receiver 1 in Dynasty.
Yeah, we love T Higgins. I want to see him re-sign personally, but I got that they did sign that. Yeah, this is just a bit of a mess, this tight end room. So, Kev, over to you for your question.
Yeah, it just reminded me of that GIF where it's like, so there's a chance sort of thing. Irv Smith, tight end. I'm not an Irv fan. I think a lot of it's an opportunity to sell him in my eyes, the fact that the situation with the Bengals. But yeah, looking back over his career, he's yet to have a 100-point fantasy season or hit 4 receptions. Now, he has battled injuries. He's still only 24. He was a top 50 draft pick back in 2019. So maybe I'm just being a little bit harsh because I was a Tyler Conklin fan when they was both in Minnesota. But just want to note, tight end 21, Bengals offense, high-powered. Is that making it enticing for him as a tight end 2 streamer guy, or are you completely out on Irv Smith after not the greatest start to his career? To give a bit of context, Hayden Hurst was top 20 in fantasy points per game last season.
Yeah, I think I'm not necessarily like clamoring to grab Irv Smith for my dynasty teams, but I think it's easy to forget that he actually was a good prospect back in 2019 and just has dealt with injuries and played behind Kyle Rudolph for a little bit there. And to your point, Hurst, though, who he is replacing, wasn't necessarily the most effective tight end. So that's kind of the thing that makes me hesitate a little bit. Hurst was only the tight end 16 in expected half PPR points per game. So the usage wasn't there, which makes sense when you have a rock solid trio of wide receivers that you'd rather get involved than Hurst. But, when we're talking about the tight end landscape, and I know we'll talk about, the Browns and Njoku too later, but outside of the top, 6, 7, or 8, I'm just going to try to find guys. If I don't have them on my dynasty team, I'm acquiring a bunch of guys that are in a high-powered offense that could have opportunities in the red zone. And Irv Smith happens to be one of those guys. So at that cost, I'm fine investing in him, knowing and hoping that I have another tight end on my roster or 2 that I can plug in as well. He's not someone I'd rely on every week, but the upside is certainly there to at least give you, that 8, 9, 10 PPR points, which is, plenty to be a tight end 1 apparently. So, that's definitely the upside's there, but it's for sure limited because of the volume.
And I would say, Kevin, I share your skepticism about Smith. He's had a bit of a false start to his pro career, if you will. But that said, at tight end 21, I really love the price point on the guy. I mean, he's in a great place to resuscitate his career. If you're going to go somewhere, that's the place you want to go. I would say certainly Smith can rival Hayden Hurst in the athleticism department. Mm-hmm. And in the Cincy offense, who's to say what his potential could possibly be? The problem here is that I'm doubtful that you'll find Smith priced as a tight end 21 because you've got people who drafted him, held on to him for over 4 years. They're going to clutch those shares, with white knuckles and try to get, a fresh lease on life with the Bengals. So I don't necessarily blame them if you've held on to him that long, hoping for, some signs of promise, but I'm not going to pay up on his potential. If I can get him for cheap, I'm happy to stash him, but I'm not going to pay big time prices that the people that drafted him are probably looking to solicit now that he's landed in a more favorable position.
Indeed. And for a couple of years, Kev has certainly took the mickey out of me and Matt for being big fans of Irv Smith, saying that the breakout's coming. Hopefully he's not going to draw me back in this season. But who's to say that I might just get drawn back into him? I think that rounds up the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll move on to division rivals, the Cleveland Browns. Starting at the quarterback position, got to talk about Deshaun Watson. Obviously, there's a lot of hope for him to come back into that offense last year, but he really did not look great, and especially for fantasy, didn't look his old self. So perhaps he was rusty for having 2 years off. Just what's Deshaun Watson's ceiling for year 2 in this Browns offense? Obviously, in his career, he's finished as a quarterback 5 in fantasy 3 times. Do you see a world where he ever gets back to around about quarterback 5? Could he be maybe quarterback 8? He's currently quarterback 12 on Keep Trade Cut. So at that price, are you buying or are you selling, or is he a hold? Is he valued appropriately at quarterback 12?
So I'll say, first of all, we always have to kind of make this disclaimer these days with him, but, separating the personal from the on the field attributes is critical when you're evaluating Watson. And I don't say that to be trite. I mean, there's pro teams that decided that his personal conduct was not, such that they wanted to get involved in it when the sweepstakes was on last summer. So, there's people that run their dynasty teams that way too, and I don't fault them for that. You want to have guys that you want to root for, that you're happy to have. So I'm saying all that, and because I want to make sure that we classify that and put that kind of aside, I'm going to just talk about his football acumen and what he could bring to your roster if you choose to go after him. If you can put those details aside and focus on the football, I think you'll find, he's a 28-year-old quarterback and he's had significant success in the league. As you mentioned, he's 3 times finished within the top 5, and that was on a dysfunctional Texans organization that really not known for putting their players in the best position. So, it's not like he was on a stacked roster and just kind of lucked into, it's definitely the talent that shown through in the past when he's had success. As a player, I'm pretty bullish on Watson. I think he was understandably rusty after an almost 2-year hiatus from the game. He's going to have a full off season under his belt in Cleveland. He's not going to be dealing with the madness that went on last summer with, every day it seemed like you woke up and he was favorite to go to a different organization, and round and round we went on the carousel. He's going to have a lot more stability. He's got an incredibly strong offensive line. PFF has them ranked 2nd in the league going into this season in terms of strength of offensive line. He's got one of the top backs in Chubb, and he's got a receiving core that's headed at least by Amari Cooper. We're going to talk later about the rest of his core after that, which gets a little bit more murky. But as a quarterback 12, I'd absolutely be interested in him at that price point if you can get him there. But I kind of, going back to what I just said about Irv Smith, if people have held on to Watson all this time, I don't think they're going to sell him to you now at a quarterback 12 price, because they're finally seeing come to the light on the horizon, and they're thinking, now's my time to shine. I'm not parting with them now. So it's all that to say is I like his potential, but I don't know that you'll be able to get him at a discount at this point. Maybe last summer, given the huge suspension that he was facing, you might be able to leverage that. But right now, I think you're going to pay top prices for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's in some ways you might have to pay a little more than you'd like. considering, in my opinion, what there could be that lower ceiling as well, just because of the offense that he's in. And part of that is because of their offensive tendencies. So with Watson in their lineup, they were 22nd in the league in neutral situation passing rate. Obviously a very run heavy team with a guy like Chubb in there. And so Watson, not surprisingly, was only the QB 19 expected fantasy points per game among quarterbacks who played at least 6 games. And that's despite a heavy rushing volume that he had at 19.7% of their rushing share. So he was involved as a rusher, but the passing volume just wasn't there. And when you think about him kind of elevating back into what he was with the Texans, like that top 5, top 4 range, you think about the quarterbacks that are there now, right? Hurts and Allen. What makes them so special and so basically a cheat code for fantasy is that not only do they rush the ball and that they're effective in that, but because they're in an offense that wants to pass the ball really in first down, second down, in the red zone at any point, they're willing to pass the ball there. And you just didn't see that with Cleveland last year. Now, whether that changes because he now has an off season under his belt there with them, and he can actually establish rapport with some of the receivers and that coaching staff, then I could see that changing. But for him to get to that top range again, they just either need to be a little more pass heavy than they were, and that could happen, or Watson just needs to be highly efficient, which we didn't see last year. But again, rusty after not playing for a while, so maybe that's part of it too. I'm just a little hesitant to invest in him, and to Jason's point, where you might have to pay a little closer to peak value, I'd rather go after someone else that may not, some people aren't as high on. So that's I'd probably be hesitant at the price that he's going on right now.
Yeah, and Kev, Deshaun Watson, he currently at Keep Trade Cut, you've got the 3 rookie quarterbacks that are going ahead of him. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, I think we'd all have him ahead of him. But in terms of Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, they're both ranked ahead of Deshaun Watson. Is that just for the rookie hype, or do you think that's fair? Would you be picking Watson ahead of these 2 guys?
I think it's wild. Yeah, I think obviously I don't expect Deshaun Watson Texans sort of bounce back straight away, if not for a couple of years, because you've got to think Texans, you're indoors, you're playing from behind most weeks because it's a terrible team. Cleveland, it's a lot better team. They're outdoors. AFC North's a really tough division historically as well. So I'm not expecting him to be a top 3 QB again, but I think QB 12, that's a little bit disrespectful. I can understand it because there will be a half of your league that are not going to buy into Watson, which does make it dangerous if you're ever looking to move off him. You've got half your league that aren't interested straight away, no matter what the price is. So I can understand the market value, but these 3 rookies, we know absolutely nothing about them other than they're potentially enticing. Out of the 3, if they all hit the ceiling, them 3 and Watson, there's only Richardson that gets close. Young and Stroud, they don't have the ceiling for me. I think they've got better flaws than if Watson goes completely off the rails, but yeah, I think he's a massive value. I managed to get him at the 212 in a start to pair with Mahomes in one this offseason, which Mahomes and Watson, that's like chef's kiss, isn't it?
Indeed. And talking about high ceilings, has this running back still got a high ceiling for you? Kev, over to you for your question.
Yeah, Nick Chubb, interesting guy. He's always been a fade of mine just based on the high risk, excellent real life runner. Honestly, like talent wise as a rusher, I'd have him top 3, top 2, maybe even neck and neck with Derrick Henry as a runner purely. But low weekly floor due to the lack of pass work. Last season, he made me look like a bit of a fool because he was running back 6 in fantasy points per game due to that crazy fast start, 13 touchdowns. And then thinking about him this season, a Watson-led offense is enticing for the rush work, the red zone opportunities, sort of like the keeping people honest, etc. But yeah, running back 15 at market, age 28 season. Would you prefer Nick Chubb at that cost, or would you prefer taking a slight discount on Derrick Henry, the man himself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think those are 2 interesting running backs to compare because they are slightly older, and Henry being maybe a year or 2 older. But if I had to choose between those 2, I'd actually pick Henry, even though he is older, because considering the price, I believe they're probably priced fairly closely because of the age, and no one really wants to acquire old running backs apparently anymore in dynasty leagues. So there's always that market for you to capitalize on that as a contender. And I do echo your sentiments about the volatility, right, with him. We saw that to start the year before their bye week. He was on an absolute tear, one of the most efficient running backs. And then we saw the regression happen in the second half. And so even though he was the RB 6.5 PPR points per game, only the RB 15 in expected fantasy points. So that tells you the gap there is relying heavily on efficiency. There's that potential for regression. Henry, on the other hand, just assuming both stay healthy, Henry was the RB6 in usage and expected fantasy points last year, led all running backs with a 46% opportunity share. Because essentially half of that the Titans offense, and I don't see that really changing if he's healthy. The second running back in opportunity share was Jacobs at 40%. There's that massive gap there. Chubb was at 32% to just provide, a comparison there. So the massive difference there with Henry even last year kind of taking on some more of that the passing volume as well. I'd rather have him he's shown us if he's healthy. And that's the caveat. If he's healthy, and I know he's getting older, he's kind of like on that cliff now. I'd still take Henry. And obviously it depends on the price in your dynasty leagues. But if they're 1-to-1, give me Henry, assuming health there.
And I guess I'll be I'll be kind of a counterpoint to that argument. Well, I agree that it's a good argument.
I love it.
I guess I appreciate the concerns regarding the lack of pass catching. That's definitely a factor. I think I'm still opting for Chubb, given the choice between he and Henry. And I think my answer has more to do with team makeup than anything else. I mean, when I look at Tennessee, I see them as a team in transition. Over the last 2 drafts, they've added Levis, Haskins, Tajay Spears, Treylon Burks, and Okonkwo to their offense. So they've got a lot of young talent there. They're clearly looking to turn the page and kind of reset for the future. Obviously, I expect guys like Henry and Tannehill to start the season. But if things go poorly from a record standpoint, I would not at all be surprised to see them start to pivot to that youth movement that they've got going on down there and kind of prepare for what lies ahead. Not to mention, I think with Henry on as an expiring deal, they may also, if they are doing well, they may opt to kind of ride him into the ground, at his age and given what they're trying to do down there. So if they are successful, he may get kind of dinged up from overuse. And that's a daunting proposition for an often injured player and an aging running back. So if you contrast that, I feel like Chubb's kind of in a brighter spot. It sounds funny to say that Cleveland would ever be a bright spot, but I think he's no longer going to have to be the sole focal point of that offense with Watson kind of back in the fold and a more full-time player for them. Now with Kareem Hunt out of town, he's going to have perhaps more options for pass catching role. And I guess I would sum it up to say, like with Henry, I think you're probably paying a ceiling price. Like, that's the best that he could possibly be. Whereas I think with Chubb, it's kind of more of a floor price. You kind of know that they're going to use him. He's going to be utilized, and there's not so much of a concern about, is the changing of the guard going to take place there? Is the guy coming in from behind him to kind of usurp him? There's really nobody on that depth chart behind him that really concerns me from an advancement standpoint. So I'll say Chubb, but I appreciate all the points that were made in favor of Henry as well.
I think that's the best part about dynasty is that there is value in all of these guys, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's just dependent on your team makeup and how you want to build your team. So while I was against Chubb, I do think he is a great running back, and I could see him absolutely smash again this year. It just, that depends on how you want to build your team. But that's why it's so fun to have these discussions, because both guys could be top 5 running backs next year.
Yep. I like that the nerds disagree with courtesy. That's very nice.
Love it. And Kev, Nick Chubb view, is he still a fade this offseason? They've obviously got rid of Kareem Hunt now. Surely I think they're a prime candidate to bring in one of these other veteran running backs that's on the free agent market. So I think the Browns think that they're going to contend, and if they do, they're going to look to add. And is that going to take away what Chubb does?
Yeah, I think they might bring in Kareem Hunt. But because we've seen that before, don't we, where they end up cutting someone and then bringing them back when they realise that Jerome Ford isn't the answer and they're expecting to compete. But I just think, just Chubb and Henry in Dynasty. I don't have a lot of them, if anything, in Dynasty. Just I prefer running backs that catch passes in the main. Henry actually did show a bit of pass catching last season. And when he does get it in space, it's obviously just a wrecking ball. But yeah, I forgot what your question was. But yeah, Nick Chubb, just keep fading him.
Yeah.
Eventually we'll be right.
I got there.
So yeah, we better move on to the wide receiver, and still the established wide receiver, Amari Cooper. When Deshaun Watson came in, he was the wide receiver 27 in the games that Watson was in at quarterback in 2022. So not amazing, but then with Jacoby Brissett, he was much better, and over the course of the season, finished as the wide receiver 10. So for you lads, can he still be a wide receiver 1 in 2023? Do you like the prospects of Amari Cooper, and do you think perhaps he's a value now? He's getting up there in age. Is he a guy that can still put wide receiver 1 numbers up?
I'll say I do think he is a value to your question. I think he's got to be a pass catcher in that offense because it's just for a lack of other options there. That said, the volume to me isn't enough for me to consider him ever regarding for a wide receiver 1 spot. I mean, I look at the wide receiver 1 candidates, and you've got guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, T. Higgins. They're at the back end of that wide receiver 1 class. And to me, there's no way I can put Amari Cooper above any of those guys. So I think it's, Cleveland has a very run-heavy philosophy, which we just talked about. They've been top 10 in run percentage over the last 3 seasons, and they were top 8 in 2022. And I don't believe they're going to deviate from that, going forward. That seems they've established that that's their identity. I think, for Cooper to climb into that upper tier seems not practical or not likely. Instead, I feel very comfortable regarding him as a wide receiver 2, and I would gladly pay for him at that price. If you've got him locked into your second spot, you're probably looking pretty well from week to week. But for a wide receiver 1, I think that's just a bridge too far for me.
Yeah, for some reason I'm mostly just agreeing with you here, but I do I do agree that I think wide receiver 1 is a little optimistic, and part of that is because, like you talked about, the passing offense, and I think it just depends on how far Watson can take them, right? I think it's dependent on how efficient he can be as a passer. Already talked about the Browns not being a pass-heavy team, and I was digging into Amari Cooper, over the last couple of days, and I was surprised that he actually was. He had a 25% target share, a 39% air yard share with Watson. And you think of those numbers and you're like, oh my gosh, that should be a wide receiver 1, right? Mm-hmm. But then you go back quality of those targets, the frequency of those targets. Even though you're accounting for most of it, his expected points were only around 9.5 in half PPR leagues. That's wide receiver 33. So, you got to rely on efficiency there, get those touchdowns if you can. And we just didn't see that with Watson, right? And so that's where, if he can maintain those market share numbers and they can elevate that offense, then I could see he could be around that low end wide receiver 1 range. But if they kind of maintain that run heavy philosophy, which has worked so well, and when you have Chubb, it's hard to argue otherwise, right? Even though we just bashed him literally a few minutes ago. But I think that's their offense. It's the run heavy offense. And unless that changes, with also Elijah Moore coming in, who, we'll talk about him in a little bit, it's possible Amari Cooper's target share goes down a little bit. And then at the same time, in a run-heavy offense, there just isn't as much opportunity for him to get into that wide receiver 1 range.
Yeah, I love it. And obviously we've not got Matt on, who would be just waxing lyrical about Amari Cooper, who loves the guy. But Kev, wide receiver 37 on Keep Trade Cut. We know Keep Trade Cut is rather ageist, so it will be fading Amari Cooper at this stage of his career. But is he a guy at that sort of? Are you happy to pay that sort of money for Amari Cooper as, say, wide receiver 2 on your dynasty team?
Yeah, it's a roller coaster with Amari Cooper. I think that tier of wide receivers from literally 15, 20 to 40, 45, 50, it's very flat tier. So you can be looking at things like if you've got Watson on your team, Cooper's appealing. If you've got lots of sort of younger wide receivers on earlier on in your draft picks, you maybe take Cooper just to get the age split a little bit as well. So yeah, I can't see him in wide receiver 1 again, but he is someone that's appealing at that price, based on the various team builds you've got and how you expect things to play out volatility wise.
Yeah, agreed. And then over to you, Kev, to sort out the rest of the wide receiver room.
Sort it out. Yeah, we'll try and sort it out for the audience here. But yeah, it's an interesting group, actually. I think I've seen fans of all these various players on their own. People want to tell a story about each one, how they're going to be the wide receiver 2 tied to Watson, which is, if you're just doing it on that basis, it's appealing, but maybe not as appealing when you think about pass volume, etc. Superstar tight end as well on that team. Yeah, I think interesting trade for Elijah Moore. First of all, you've got your 3rd round selection of Tillman this year, and you've got Donovan Peoples-Jones, who was a top 40 wide receiver last season. So yeah, I'll just throw it out to you. Who do you think will be the wide receiver 2 for fantasy? Is there anybody that's appealing to you in Dynasty more than the other 2?
Yeah, to your point, the wide receiver 2 in that offense, there's definitely limits to it, and that's why I think we just need to also like temper our expectations. If I had to pick one of those guys, I'm probably on team Elijah Moore, which I've heard arguments for every single one of those guys already, but I think it's hard for me to let Elijah Moore go, considering what he dealt with the Jets coming out of Ole Miss. Just in my process was a 92nd percentile wide receiver as a prospect, really solid player and prospect. And I know the Jets kind of tainted his value a little bit over the last couple of years with some of those injuries they dealt with, but then also the quarterback inconsistencies. But I hate doing splits because there's this context of like you can do a split at any point throughout the career and you can like paint the picture in one way. But we always see this with rookie wide receivers, that there's this rookie bump after the bye week, right? And we saw that exact thing with his rookie year in 2021, where he was the wide receiver 17 expected fantasy points, so wide receiver 2 usage there with the Jets, wide receiver 8 in fantasy points over expected, so the efficiency was there as well. And he was in the midst of a breakout year until he suffered that quad injury and they put him on IR. So it's hard for me to not look at that, see what he did as a prospect at Ole Miss as well. And he's only 23 years old. I'm not sure how old Tillman is, but isn't he as old, if not older than Elijah Moore? So that's why I'm still intrigued by Elijah Moore if I had to pick one of these guys. But to your guys' points, wide receiver 2 in a Browns offense with Watson may not be as valuable as we think. And we kind of already talked about Amari Cooper, the limits there that applies to for the wide receiver 2 on this offense.
And I would just say, I mean, after Cooper, obviously, I think the wide receiver core gets very murky. To your point, it's a crowded room. I don't think there's really any clear wide receiver 2 candidate amongst that trio that we've been talking about. To me, it seems like the philosophy of the Browns was to just pack that room and see which candidate kind of emerges through training camp. They all have kind of some downside or some warts to them. Tillman's an intriguing prospect, but he's got a limited route tree. He ran mostly vertical routes at Tennessee. And he's always been on the right side of their alignment as well. So he's not familiar with pre-snap motion, which is a big part of obviously what happens in the NFL. And I think he's going to take some time to acclimate. Peoples-Jones, he saw an increase last year. He netted nearly 100 targets, but he didn't really do much with those 100 targets. So he kind of fell back in that larger role. And obviously the Browns had an urgency about bringing in some competition. So they're not sold on his ability to kind of seize that role, that job there. And then lastly, I mean, I guess I might be ostracized from the fantasy analyst community, but I'm not as hyped about Elijah Moore. I definitely see the potential. But I think he had ample opportunity to kind of prove himself as a Jet, and despite not much competition, he kind of failed to do that. I know he battled injuries, but I think he had a thin depth chart there, and he, instead of internalizing his frustrations, he kind of publicly lashed out at the management, which didn't help his situation or his standing in the league. Certainly ownership and management don't like to see that happen. Maybe a fresh start in Cleveland is exactly what it needs. I'm just a little bit dubious or skeptical of it, so I kind of want to see it before I buy into it. I would say if you can acquire a share or two of this trio and you can get them at kind of lottery ticket prices, I'm okay with it. Kind of just stash them and see what happens. But if you're paying any more than that kind of deep discount, it feels like you're being a little bit overly optimistic on any of those guys.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said, really. It's been really disappointing. 2 guys that I liked in Elijah Moore coming across to the Browns. Not a great situation. There has been quite a few people that have been excited for the move, but as you've both alluded to, wide receiver 2 spot on the Browns is not a fantasy productive one. And then Tillman, he was a guy that I was pretty excited about coming out this year. To land in that spot as well is really not great. So I probably would even take the discount on Peoples-Jones as the cheapest one of the three. Kev, which one of these three are you most interested in? You can't say none.
Just for the rookie model, it's Elijah Moore. He's really letting down the scores of that rookie model with his output so far. I had him like very similar, if not higher than guys like Waddle, Bateman, etc. So he needs to hit, otherwise I'll look a little bit daft.
We'll move on to a guy that you do absolutely love in terms of fantasy, and David Njoku, the tight end, and just a guy that I always seem to go to in a draft. If I miss out on one of the elite tight ends, it seems to be David Njoku. He's one of the guys that I like to take a dart throw on. Do you guys like David Njoku in Dynasty? And then what is your general tight end strategy? Because some people's has changed throughout the years. If you do miss out on one of the elite guys, who are the sort of guys that you target later on in your drafts?
So yeah, I'm also bullish on Njoku. I mean, I think he finished. I know he finished as a tight end 11 in PPR scoring last year, and that was without Watson for a majority of the season. So he's got I would say a pretty big upgrade at quarterback. It stands to reason that big things could be in store for him going forward. I think he's been in the league for a long time, and it feels that he's been in the league a long time, but he's really only on the precipice of his age 27 season. It's right in the center of that 25 to 30-year-old span, which is typically regarded as the prime years for tight end production. I think, Marvin, you did a study on that. Actually, I found that information on something that you published. So I don't want to take credit for it. You certainly deserve it. But I think he's kind of like primed for I don't want to say a breakout, because I think he's kind of been right in front of our eyes. But if you can get him at a cheap price, I have no objection to that at all. As far as like my philosophy on the general philosophy from Dynasty on tight ends, I think we have a similar approach based on your question. My first preference is to try to acquire one of the elite options in that top tier, guys like Kelsey, Andrews, Kittle, because I think it gives you a significant advantage over the competition. But if you fail to snag one of those, or they become too pricey, I would just pivot to the guys in that tight end 1, tight end 2 fringe kind of range that I feel have a higher upside. And I would say Njoku kind of fits perfectly into that profile.
Yeah, I agree. You look at what Njoku did. I mean, top 10 in so many metrics, yards per run, great after the catch as well. And there's, there you go. Love Njoku this season. I mean, I think he's going to be, once again, a solid tight end 1 with the upside to maybe elevate into that next tier. And so for me in Dynasty, I think he's firmly in that like tight end 8, tight end 9 range, like where maybe Dalton Kincaid is right now, as high as he's going. But he's not in that top tier, but for his price and what he could become, I think I'm willing to pay that for Njoku and love him in tight end premium leagues and all that, just because he doesn't cost you as much as like a Travis Kelce, which obviously there's that gap, but he'll still hold your team together if you have a strong wide receiver running back core. Mm-hmm. But as for like tight end strategy, very similar to what Jason said, I want to get one of those top guys, right? But that's not always realistic, because once those guys are on someone's team, they probably won't trade them away, which is really tough to, then to find a tight end that can rival what a Travis Kelce, Andrews will provide for your opponent. But I usually try to think ahead, and it's funny you mentioned that article, because I was looking at that again. I think I wrote like a couple years ago. But the when you look at tight ends and when they kind of enter that like top 5 range, top 5, top 6 range, it's usually around 25 years old in their 4th season. And we saw that last year with TJ Hawkinson, right? Great situation, showed us top production and that upside. And then he entered that, top 3, I think he was last year in points per game, or top 5 at the very least. So when I look at some of these tight ends, I like to find guys that could enter that range here, who are kind of approaching age 25, their 4th season. So I think about guys like Pat Freiermuth, Cole Kmet, and this is maybe a little early, but Trey McBride, who I liked as a prospect and could have some opportunities here, and will be 24, I think, this year. So maybe a little early for him, but Freiermuth, Cole Kmet, those guys won't cost you as much as some of these, even Njoku even. But there is that upside that if, let's say, the Bears elevate their offense because of what they did this offseason, he could enter that top 5, top 6 tight end range, and eventually, improve in dynasty value. And that's all we're trying to do here, right? In dynasties, find these guys and find the guys that can improve in value. And so just looking for those tight ends with upside is what I try to do if I can't get that top tier Travis Kelce, Andrews, or Kyle Pitts. I guess he's still in there too. So
I love it. And Kev, just the last word on you on Njoku, because I know you were on him before I am, so you need to take the credit for this one.
Yeah, I just think it was an easy process last off season, thinking Njoku round on draft capital, super athletic. People weren't factoring in the Deshaun Watson hype that there was. As soon as it hit the lineup, you was going to see people get really excited about Njoku. So a really easy guy to pick up value last season. He's now dropped to tight end 13, which just shaking my head really, seeing guys like Laporta and Kincaid above him, which, fair enough, the shiny new toy, but over the next 3 years, I think Njoku's going to smoke those guys.
No, love it, Kev. And with that, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Marvin, for coming on, sharing this hour with us in your Saturday morning. Really appreciate you coming on and helping us raise money for this Mind charity. But before we let you go, is there anything that you'd like to plug and let the audience know where they can find you?
Go for it, Jason.
All right, sure. You can find me at, you can see my Twitter handle there on the screen. It's Spide78. That's the easiest place to reach me. My job's to help you. So reach out to me. I'm happy to do whatever I can to help you succeed at fantasy. That's what I'm here for. You'll see written content from me on Dynasty Nerds throughout the summer and the fall. But primarily, just reach out if there's anything I can do or advice I can give you. That's what I'm there for. And I also want to say before I jump out that I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a pleasure being here. I love the mission of what you're doing here today. I want to remind people to go ahead and make a donation to Mind Charity if they're able to, and thank people for tuning in.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us. This was super fun. And like I said, I appreciate you guys setting this up and raising money for such a great cause. And so, the listeners can find me on FF_Marvin E on Twitter. Most of my work finds its way over there at some point. And that's, there's a lot of dynasty storylines to still tell and talk about over the next several months. And so, always enjoy interacting with people there whether it's articles or questions. So definitely just reach out and interact. It's always fun in the dynasty Twitter world. It's a wild place.
It is. No, we appreciate you coming on for your first time, Jason and Marvin, a returning guest. You've both been incredible. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day. Good luck, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers. Take care. With that,
we'll bring him back.
Hello.
We will. Just before we move on to the next show, just want to say a massive thank you again for all the donations we've received so far. You can still donate right up until the end of June. So go check out our link on our pinned tweet at Fantasy Wildcard on Twitter, and then search Fantasy Wildcard Charity Streamathon 2023 on the Just Giving page. Yeah, so thank you again for supporting Mind Charity. We're doing great work in the mental health scenes.
Cheers, Ali. Yeah. And I'll take it from here. You can have a little rest now, and the best two can crack on with the
best two, yeah.
The rest of the stream.
Cheerio, lads.
We'll, see you in a little bit.
See ya.
Right, Matt, me and you, here we go. We've got the AFC North. We're continuing with the AFC North, so welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I'm a little bit like Rihanna, aren't I, Kev? Doing the costume change halfway through. I'm like Rihanna at the Super Bowl.
Notice you were in your pink hoodie before, now you're in your black t-shirt, so you're really keeping the audience guessing what's next, really. So we'll have to see how we get on in the later hours of tonight in the UK. But yeah, we're sticking in the AFC North. We've got two fantastic teams, the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we have got a fantastic guest on with us now from the Dynasty Warzone. We've got Memphis, who you can follow on Twitter at DWZ Memphis. How are you doing?
Good, man. First of all, God bless you guys and the work you're doing. I'm in the green room, as they call it in the entertainment space, and I'm sitting here firing out tweets to the Dynasty Warzone listeners and my personal Twitter account, trying to get more people in here tuned in, watching us as we talk ball, but more importantly, raise some funds for charity. You notice my lights. My lights are multiple color. Green is the color of Mental Health Awareness Month. So super awesome to be here, and excited to catch up with you guys live in person.
No, we're very excited to have you on today, and you've got two fantastic teams. We talk about the Ravens and the Steelers. So we'll jump straight in on the Ravens at the QB position, and I'll hand it over to you, Matt, to kick us off.
Yeah, so obviously we're going to be kicking things off, talking about a little bit of Lamar Jackson, the big name throughout the offseason. Was he going to sign this new contract that he'd been fighting to get? And finally, we've got his answer. Yes, he is. He's staying with the Ravens. And not just that, the Ravens have then backed that up and added a weapon for him as well, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later on during the stream. But at this moment in time, all things are going super well for Lamar Jackson after what was a really rocky few months for him. So, Memphis, I'm just going to throw a quick question straight over to you now. And it's with Lamar Jackson. His current ADP is around that RB7 range. With everything I've just mentioned about the contract, the new weapons, obviously the changes to the coaching staff as well. Is maybe Lamar Jackson being a little bit underrated at that value of QB7? Would you now be looking to move him up your rankings?
No, without like not answering the question, it's like that he's in that tier. He's in that QB 7 to 10 range for me. He's actually my personal QB 9. If he does take a progression in his passing game, which I really hope he does, it's going to impact the running game. And the running game is where a large majority of his fantasy points, which is what we do, has come from. So I've got to take that into account. I will say from a dynasty asset, the contract, the commitment by the Ravens, adding Odell Beckham Jr., bringing in Zay Flowers in the draft. Hopefully Rashad Bateman can stay healthy. Obviously, you've got Andrews, you've got J.K. Dobbins. So the pieces are in place. Good Lord, let Ronnie Stanley stay healthy just one time. But if Lamar does take a step forward in a positive way from a passing standpoint, we know that every yard he passes for is a yard that he potentially doesn't rush for, which we know rushing yards accumulate more points than passing yards. And then passing touchdowns, depending on your scoring format, are worth less than rushing touchdowns. So it's good for long-term dynasty, which is what we're talking about. But short-term, we might feel a little turbulence as he's learning the Todd Monken offense, as he's getting used to new weapons, and he hasn't played football. And, he missed the last 5 or 6 games of the season, including the playoffs. So long-term positive, yes. Short-term, I see some bumps in the road, but I think he's fairly rated in that 7 to 10 range.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I'm slightly on the other side of it, but before we get onto the flip, I'll come to you, Matt, and what you think on Lamar.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that I've really liked. Obviously, we know we've seen the ceiling with Lamar Jackson and obviously that rushing upside. But Memphis does make a great point. Obviously, this is going to be now a new look offense. A lot of people are talking about how it's going to now hopefully progress more to a pass heavier offense, I guess, than what we've seen. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's never been touted as somebody that's a heavy passer of the ball. He's been mainly his weapon has been his legs. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that develops moving forward now. With the new coaching staff. And I think Memphis does make a great point. If it now does become more pass heavy, but we lose that rushing side from Lamar Jackson, the design runs, then that's obviously going to be a knock against Lamar Jackson for the reasons that Memphis brought up, that we know rushing it's the holy grail when it comes to fantasy quarterbacks. If you've got a rushing quarterback, there's a potential super ceiling with these guys. And Lamar Jackson's shown that he's one of the best rushers of the ball when it comes to quarterback play in the NFL. But as I say, Memphis makes a great point that if this does become more reliant on his arm and maybe takes away from his legs, then maybe he could be looking at it on the flip side and saying maybe QB7 is is potentially the right spot, and maybe even a touch too high if you're concerned. But for me personally, I'll maybe view it a bit more that I think Lamar Jackson is a better thrower of the ball than what we've seen. And even if he does lose out on those design runs, I think there's still going to be times where he's going to have to scramble. He's going to be able to rack up the points through his scrambling from avoiding tackles if plays break down or whatever. He's got that backup in his rushing ability. So for me, I still think that I think he should maybe be ranked slightly higher than QB7. I've got him, I think, around QB5, and it is one big tier for me, that tier. So, like Memphis mentioned, 7 to 10, I've maybe got it a little bit bigger, and with 2 more quarterbacks that are in front of where he's got Lamar Jackson. But as a whole, I think it's really exciting to see this new offense that's going to be materializing. I'm hoping that we just, rather than seeing him move away from the rushing, I'm hoping that's just added to the rushing. We've still got that solid flow with the rushing with Lamar Jackson. So as a dynasty quarterback, I do really like him. I love the potential ceiling, but I do understand we're going through a change at the moment.
Two things though. A, don't throw Lamar out with the bathwater. Okay, first of all, that's number one. I'm not saying that he's going to. Like I said, it's going to be short term. But then again, the flip side of the contract is whereas maybe last year Lamar was a little bit less hesitant to run because he didn't have financial stability and security. Now he's got the injury thing. So now that's out the window, right? Because it's in the back of your mind. It's subconscious. It's like, man, I just can't take off and run. If I get hurt, I'm not going to get the money. And now that he's got the money, maybe he runs more. So for me, keeping him in that 7 to 9 range is safe. Please don't hear what we're not saying and like throw Lamar out. He's like, he's not the Lamar of old. He always has that in his bag of tricks. But you just got to kind of factor in everything. And I'm going to take a somewhat of a cautious, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I like that phrase. That's a nice phrase. I think with me on Lamar, I've been previously high on him, and that did actually burn me towards the end of last season. I probably had too much exposure on teams that were in the playoffs and fighting for titles, and it ended up that actually if I'd have been a little bit smarter and played a more diverse approach, that it would have had better outcomes in the playoff matchups because he obviously got injured and the rest is history. I think it's an opportunity in terms of the new situation that yes, I can see the scenario where he's getting back towards the MVP level season, pass efficiency, best weapons of his career. I can also see what you said, Memphis, around maybe less rushing because if he's less of a rusher, that's gonna hammer his fantasy value as well. If you're trying to compare him 1-for-1 with say Joe Burrow in a passing game and having the same level of rushing, for example, he's not going to get there, but. Yeah, I think it's a massive tier for me, about QB4 to QB10. You can tell a story for any of those guys based on the league settings and stacks and things like that. So, yeah, don't throw out Lamar, but just be smart and diversify, unlike I didn't last season. But we're going to move on to another guy that's potentially at a crossroads, possibly someone that's enticing to buy in this new offense, but maybe you've been burnt by this guy previously as well. So, J.K. Dobbins. We're still awaiting this post-injury breakout. I think as a college prospect, he was outstanding. It's not quite translated into fantasy, running back 33 and running back 34 in fantasy points per game. Everything's been capped by a low pass volume under Greg Roman. However, new OC and Todd Monken makes it interesting. Running back 16 at market. It's going to cost you a 24 first. He's also a free agent after this season. So Memphis, just want to know, with J.K. Dobbins, are you buying him now? Are you buying him in season? Or are you buying him never?
If I were to buy, I would buy in season. I think hope springs eternal. I think there's reason to be excited about J.K. Dobbins and his production in 2023. Another year removed from a very major knee injury. And I like looking at the actions of the team. They didn't bring in any real running backs at all the entire offseason, free agency or in the draft. So that tells me that Baltimore is very confident in J.K. Dobbins. In the short term, J.K. Dobbins is in a contract year. I love, LOVE, love guys in a contract year. Why? Because hungry dogs get fed. He's going to want the ball. If he's got that little nagging hamstring or calf in week 14, he doesn't care. He's playing because more than likely in week 14, Baltimore will be in the middle of potentially fighting for a playoff spot, and J.K. Dobbins will want to make sure he shines. You mentioned the lack of pass volume in this offense, and that's true. not just in Baltimore, but anywhere where there's a mobile quarterback, be that Philadelphia, potentially now with my Colts and Jonathan Taylor. I'll let the people doing the AFC South, handle that equation. But this is how you potentially get upside volume. Is I'll buy him in season if he starts to disappoint, because I know he's going to be a free agent next offseason. Now, will he automatically re-sign with the Ravens? Maybe. Will he potentially go to a running back situation where he could be more involved in the passing game? Yes. So I don't like buying guys like this right now, popular players from popular colleges on popular teams going into the season. I like to make those moves in season, mid season. I did this last year with Miles Sanders. I knew Miles Sanders was not going to get a ton of passing work. He surprised me with double-digit touchdowns. He rewarded my faith in him. And then he went to Carolina, where maybe he can go back with Frank Reich and he can replicate that 50 receptions he had as a rookie with a different quarterback and a different offense. So J.K. Dobbins, I am 100% in on the talent. I think the price is still just a hair high right now. But in season, I'll be looking for a 2-3 week window of involvement, whether it be Gus Edwards or someone else. I'll swoop in. I'll try to acquire then, and then hoping that in the offseason that he signs a free agent contract. He'll only be 26 in 2024. He could have 2 or 3 really good years on that second contract. And I'm looking not only this season, but I'm looking the next 2 or 3. And worst case scenario, he re-signs on a very good offense that scores a lot of points in Baltimore. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to say in season, but those are my reasons why, guys.
Yeah, he's definitely a really polarizing guy. I think when you look at the bare numbers, running back 33 and 34, it gets you really worried in my eyes. I think someone like Javonte Williams is similar in fantasy points per game, but maybe Dobbins has got less risk. The fact that he's a year removed from that injury, whereas Javonte is just getting over it. So, yeah, come to you, Matt, on this with Dobbins. I know he's a guy that you really loved as a prospect before he came in. He had a great rushing touchdown success as a rookie. Is he someone that you'd be buying at running back 16?
Yeah, I think, and for the reasons that Memphis brought up, is obviously he's in that contract year, and you just got to look back, like Memphis mentioned, with guys like Miles Sanders, but obviously Josh Jacobs is the name that people are going to bring up. He was a guy that people had written off, said that it was never going to be what we'd hoped he was going to be, and then he comes out with this huge breakout season in his final year, and obviously then gets the tag with the Raiders. So I think it could be a similar story for somebody like J.K. Dobbins, where and the way you look at it as well, he mentioned about the fight and the player of it's a contract journey to earn a contract, but you can also look at it from a franchise perspective of, well, he's in his last year. Let's just run him into the ground. Let's just get all we can out of him. And if it doesn't pan out, then we can move on next year. So I think it's a win-win situation when you've got these running backs coming into contract years. And for that reason, I'm still happy to invest in J.K. Dobbins in the hope that he does have that breakout season. But even if it doesn't play out, we're going to get to this point in the offseason next year, a little bit like with a Dalvin Cook who's potentially moving on. And you got that new hope of if he lands in a new situation, we can build a new formula around this player and a new perspective on how we view them. And you're then getting that boost in value again. So it feels like you can't really lose too badly at this stage. So I'm happy to go out and pay for him now, see what happens, hope for the best, and get in that Josh Jacobs kind of year. But even if it doesn't pan out, I'm not worried, because I know that there's going to be a new perspective around him when we go into next offseason if he becomes a free agent.
Indeed, and you mentioned new perspective, new situations. That ties in really nicely to this next guy. We're going to move from running back to wide receiver, and back to you, Matt.
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the top, Lamar Jackson's finally got some weapons around him, some added weapons, and they obviously brought in Zay Flowers in the first round, linking up with a former first-round wide receiver in Rashad Bateman as well. So Memphis, just a really simple one, to be honest, because a lot of people are talking about Zay Flowers now. How do you see him fitting into this offense, and who do you think actually has the better season out of the two with Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman?
I think it's going to be Bateman. I think he's got more to prove. They're both first-round guys. Zay Flowers is the guy that I'll be looking to get this time next year, because the next rookie class will be coming in. Baltimore will eventually reach that point to where they can't continue to put first-round picks on the wide receiver position. I say that in Philadelphia continues to do it, but that doesn't really stop them. But at some point, they'll have to invest in other areas, whether that be the offensive line. And I think Odell Beckham, because, he's going to need his, right? He's boys with Lamar. he's going to get his. I mean, and we can never forget about all-world stud Mark Andrews. So I think the volume is I can only go off what I've seen. I've never seen a lot of the Todd Monken offense with a Lamar Jackson style quarterback. I saw it with Stetson Bennett, but I've not seen it with Lamar. So I don't know what it's going to look like. I have to assume it's going to be somewhat low volume. So for that reason, I'm going to be getting Zay Flowers in about a year from now. I'll be buying that post rookie quote unquote, because to me, I'm already banking in disappointment. You can't disappoint me if I'm disappointed. I'm already disappointed. But then next year, you'll be able in rookie drafts. Maybe you've got the 201 or the 204, and you don't really love the players on the board. Can you offer that in 2024 for Zay Flowers? Because Odell Beckham's gone, or he's 32 on a second one-year contract, and maybe Bateman's never lived up to the hype. But if you wait for all that information to actually come to reality, then you're going to pay more. So I'm going to wait until in season on Zay Flowers as well.
Yeah, I think you've summed that up absolutely perfect. I think thinking of just 2023, it's Bateman over Flowers for me as well. I know, Matt, earlier on in the stream, you got Ali having you a bet about for next year's Streamathon. I'll happily take a £20 bet with, if anybody fancies Zay Flowers over Bateman, hit me up. We'll have that bet, and we'll donate. Whoever loses can donate to this event next season. I think Bateman better prospect than Zay Flowers. I think people are worrying because Flowers has come in first round pick this year, so they're assuming that Bateman's lower down in the pecking order, but he's been injured. I think as long as he's healthy, I can't see a scenario where he's not outperforming Flowers this season. But to come to Memphis's point, I do think it's a great opportunity to buy into Flowers next off season because he's a round one wide receiver. He's got tons of upside. Baltimore's actually not as bad as we think if this offense is different to the Greg Roman offense, which it's got to be a lot more fruitful for the wide receivers. But just to keep in mind, the ceiling's not going to be there because Mark Andrews is an absolute beast. Yeah. But I've hammered on about Bateman then, how much I love him, and I'll carry on waxing lyrical. The fact that a little bit like Dobbins, he has battled injuries to begin his career. He had that enticing start to last season before landing on missing time and landing on IR. Flowers has been added. Market's got Bateman as the wide receiver 2 in Dynasty for the Ravens, and the clear wide receiver 3 on the offense behind Andrews as well. So currently Bateman's going between guys such as Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore on keep trade cut. So just want to know from those 3, Toney, Elijah Moore, and Rashad Bateman. I think I know the answer, but Memphis, who you got out of those 3?
All right, Elijah Moore, Toney, and Bateman. Well, I'm cutting Toney. I don't like hurt players, so I'm going to keep Elijah Moore. I still believe, and I jokingly said this on Twitter earlier today, or I got heat for it, but I was like, we've never seen Deshaun Watson thrive without Bill O'Brien. It was really more of a way of saying that I like the Patriots this year, but I really believe that Elijah Moore in a system with Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson is going to be really good. It may take a little time to process because Njoku's still there and Cooper, etc. But I have to trade Rashad Bateman because I've been doing some side hustle, some side work, some projects with the guys over at Player Profiler. And as long as guys like the Podfather, like Matt Kelly, continue to love Rashad Bateman, he's got a voice in the industry. I don't necessarily agree on Rashad Bateman, but he likes Rashad Bateman. Pete Howard of the DLF likes Rashad Bateman. There's enough support for Rashad Bateman from and to be quite honest, they could be 100% right. I'm not going to sit here and profess like I have all the answers. But for me currently, because I think I can get more for Bateman today, I'm going to trade Bateman. I believe in Elijah Moore, and I can't cut Kadarius Toney fast enough. The old bow and arrow punch out. Just get him right out of here.
I love that. And same question to you, Matt. We'll take it on that format of keep, trade, and cut. Have you got the same answer, or is it a slightly different one?
Yeah, well, I mean, for the cut, I've definitely got the same answer. Being the Giants fan that I am, Kadarius Toney, I've obviously spoke about it already when we spoke with talking about the Giants, but hated the pick when we selected him. he's just somebody that's forever going to be frustrating in fantasy, because you see those glimpses. You've seen what he's done even this past year. He's just, you see those glimpses in what can be a super exciting talent in the NFL, but he just cannot stay healthy, cannot stay on the field. And I just worry as well, being with the Chiefs, it's going to be kind of similar. I think they're going to be really creative with him, use him in a various different ways, but I don't think that's going to lead to consistent fantasy value from Kadarius Toney. So he's definitely the one that I'd cut out of those three. And in terms of keeping and trading, it's pretty close, to be honest, for me, with Elijah Moore and Rashad Bateman. I do like both of them. I really like Elijah Moore when he came in as a prospect, and was excited to see what he could do with the Jets. I thought he'd fit really well into that offense. Obviously, things didn't play out the way that we'd hoped, but like Memphis talked about, the fact that he's now gone over to the Browns, I think it's a great opportunity for him to have a bounce back. So I think between the two, he's probably the one that I would also keep. I think that he could link up really well with Deshaun Watson. I think he's going to be a great weapon for Deshaun Watson. I'm expecting Watson to take a huge stride forward from what we saw towards the end of last season. We got a glimpse of it, didn't we, right at the end with Deshaun Watson. And I think he's really going to bounce back this year. So having Elijah Moore, obviously they've got Amari Cooper over there as well, but I think Elijah Moore is going to establish himself in the slot and be a great weapon for Deshaun Watson. So he'd be my keep, and obviously trade a bit Bateman, but I do really like Bateman. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he fits into this new offense moving forward. And I think he's definitely going to have those boom weeks, but I think he's maybe a little bit more boom or bust than what Elijah Moore could be if things play out the way that we hope with him.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to disagree with the thought process of both. You've both gone for the same, but I would have gone as well, just based on the fact that, like you mentioned, Memphis, the echo chamber, the key players in the community, when they speak, people do listen. People do go up and down in rankings when the Podfather is high on someone, whether he be right or wrong. The market does follow these key names, these key brands as well. So I totally get that trading Bateman as an appealing asset would make sense. I do think the flip side is, if I'm on the clock and I'm taking Elijah Moore or Bateman, 9 times out of 10 I'm probably taking Bateman, because I do feel that right now he's shown a little bit more. Well, I guess they've both shown a little bit, if I'm honest. It is a coin flip, but yeah, just give me Bateman slightly, even though I did have Elijah Moore as a better prospect coming out, which I think is a little bit spicy, because I don't think that's the market. But we'll move on from this, because I'm changing my mind again. We're going to move on to tight end, and Matt, I'll let you wrap up the Ravens with this big dog.
Yeah, we've kind of mentioned him a little bit already. It's hard not to mention this elite guy when talking about the Ravens. It's obviously Mark Andrews, and we've seen the connection that Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews have got. We're only 1 year removed from him being the tight end one in fantasy, finally ending that Travis Kelce streak of being the tight end 1 year after year. And I think Mark Andrews has now cemented himself as an elite tight end. He's still only 27 years old. So Memphis, just another real simple one. Is there an argument that Mark Andrews should actually be the dynasty tight end one? He's currently tight end 2 alongside Kyle Pitts, but do you think he should be above somebody like Travis Kelce?
I mean, he's ahead of Travis Kelce for me, just based off age, off of the fact that this is dynasty. But Travis Kelce could have a not Darren Waller, excuse me. Oh my God, Antonio Gates. Antonio Gates, a Jason Witten. He could play way longer than we realize. I think that we tend to forget how good Mark Andrews has been for fantasy football, and that's just human nature. Whether it's fantasy football or whether it's anything else, it's he didn't do very well once Lamar went down. Lamar didn't play weeks 14 through 18, and I'm looking at his points right now. He had a 5-point. This is in tight end premium too, by the way. 1.75 tight end PPR premium, and he had a 4.7, a 7.6, a 9.0, and the 7.6 and the 9.0 were the first 2 weeks of the fantasy football playoffs. Now, if you managed to make it to your championship in week 17, he did drop 23.5, so he totally redeemed himself. But people can be jaded very, very quickly, and I think we just forget how dominant this guy was. I mean, for me, for Dynasty, and it's crazy to say, but the reason why I said I would still have Travis Kelce as my tight end 1 is I know his trade value in season. If even at his age, if I take him as my tight end 1 and my season, and Because if you do that in a startup, you're committing to win now. You're not committing to a productive struggle. But if the wheels fall off the wagon and you need to recoup some rookie assets or some younger guys, you can still get a ton for Travis Kelce if your league has a trade deadline. So for me, but yeah, Mark Andrews is my 2. And everybody's going to, say Kyle Pitts, and I don't dislike Kyle Pitts, but Ric Flair said it best: to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I've yet to see him beat the man. So he's in my top 5. But yeah, I mean, TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, there's your top 5 right there. Outside of that top 5, you're kind of wishing. So yeah, it's easy to say Mark Andrews is my 2. I always look back. I don't always want to put my opinion on it. It's like, what's the data say? I'm in the manufacturing industry, and it's I have a boss. Well, he's since moved on, but he always asked me, like, he would ask you a question about how's your production and this or that. It's human nature. Oh, we're doing good. Oh, we're doing bad. Okay. But then he would always look at me and he goes, well, what's the data say? And, over the last handful of years, he's really forced me, not only professionally, but from what I do with the fantasy football industry, what's the data say? The data says, especially when he plays with Lamar Jackson, he's arguably the best tight end in football. So hard to not have Mark Andrews as my 2.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I know he's in my top 2. We'll come on to you in a sec, Matt, but I just think I do tend to lean Kelce in startups. I just think he is in a little bit of a tier on his own for, if you're thinking this season, potentially next season. I do think he is an outlier. The fact that he's going to be 35, 36 and still performing excellent over the next few years. But yeah, I've got Andrews above Pitts. I think Pitts has got something to show. We've seen Andrews in flashes be on par with Kelce for certain spates. And with this offense potentially changing, becoming even more favorable for him.
And we got to add in Hawkinson. I mean, Hawkinson, at least I will give you I don't want to say concern, but it will give you hey, I want to see what this offense looks like with Jordan Addison added. You know what? He came in, trade deadline, ball of fire, kicked a lot of ass with the Minnesota Vikings. But what does that look like when we added a highly drafted wide receiver to the mix as well? So I would at least give someone who wanted to push back on TJ Hawkinson that argument. But yeah, if you would have a hard time selling me anyone above Andrews as your 2. And I would even listen to a conversation as your 1, to be quite honest, especially knowing that he's under a long-term contract and Lamar's under a long-term contract. You're literally looking at 3 years of harmony between these 2 guys. And isn't that what we build in 3-year windows in Dynasty? I think it's a steal.
Indeed. And Matt, who's your 1-2 for your tight end?
Yeah, I mean, without wanting to sound like a bit of an echo chamber and just repeating what both of you guys have said, I've got it exactly the same. Travis Kelce. For me, he's still a tight end 1. I agree with what Memphis said. He's a guy that can still play 2, 3, 4 years still. He is showing no signs at all of slowing down. If anything, he's still getting better. He's still putting up more fantasy points year after year than what he has been. So it's hard to knock Travis Kelce. Obviously, the age is always going to be held against him, but it's going to be a little bit like, I guess, with Tom Brady, when we kept saying, no, this is going to be it. This is going to be the end. And he just kept coming back and coming back. And I feel like Travis Kelce is going to continue to do that. So I'm fine with having him as my tight end 1. It's got to be Mark Andrews as the number 2 for the reasons we've all mentioned. I think he's shown that he can be elite. As I said, when he finished as the tight end 1 a couple of years ago, and with the change to this offense, I'm willing to take a chance and see if it can be even better than what we've seen. So for me, it's a lot for them 2 as the 1-2, and I think Kyle Pitts has to go in at 3 purely down to his age, but like we've mentioned, we've yet to fully see what we expect from Kyle Pitts. Really, we all loved him as a prospect, and rightfully so. But I just feel like the situation he's in at the moment is not rewarding as fantasy players, let's say. So I'm hopeful he can get that opportunity down the line. But as things stand right now, give me the proven guys in Kelce and Andrews.
Yeah, good stuff. We're going to move from the Ravens to the Steelers, and it's me up at QB to kick off the Steelers. And what a guy to kick off with! Kenny Pickett. Quarterback 18 at Keep Drake Cut. Really poor fantasy rookie season, QB 36 in fantasy points per game, despite a top 3 pass O-line and all the weapons he had there. Obviously, Freiermuth, Deontay, George Pickens, Najee Harris, fantastic in the pass game. Really poor passing metrics on the whole. obviously Memphis mentioned playerprofile.com, so really metrics on there: money throws, danger plays, yards per attempt, red zone percentage, clean pocket percentage. All of these were absolutely QB 29, quick QB 30, bottom end of the spectrum. So I just want to know, QB 18 at Keep Trade Cut, is Kenny Pickett the biggest sucker bet to make at QB in Dynasty?
Man, if they got rid of Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator, I would have said he's a keep. I'm not sure. I like the weapons. I love their offseason. Back in January on the Dynasty Warzone, this was one of my 2 buy-on offenses for Dynasty. They're young. I mean, think about this. Najee, year 3. George Pickens, year 2. Whether you love him or not. Pat Freiermuth, year 3. Najee Harris, year 3. They literally added – they had one of the best offensive and like protecting units of anybody in the offseason. And forgive me, my Samoan's not what it used to be. They added Isaiah Siamalu. They added Nate Herbig. They re-signed blocking tight end Zach Gentry. Then they drafted a monster in Broderick Jones. I love how petty Bill Belichick is. Let the Steelers leapfrog division rival the Jets to take Broderick Jones. And then they let Darnell Washington, the 6'7", 270-pound tight end, fall to them. Do I think he's going to be a receiving guy? No. I think he's a guy that I've read that they could transition him to a tackle or a guard later in his career because, again, he's 6'7", 270 pounds. That's a big man. So you put this wall in front of Kenny Pickett, and we'll talk about Najee in a minute. So I want to believe in Kenny Pickett, but he's like, I don't know. When I looked at the entire show sheet, like this is the guy I'm the least sure about, because I believe. How about this? This is the best way I can answer. I think he's okay. I don't mind QB 18 because he is fairly young, but I would rather have my guy Will Levis ahead of him. So there's a bold take of the pod for you. I'd rather have my man Will Levis ahead of him. And I got news for you. If he can't get it done this year, he will not get it done in the NFL. He'll go the way of the Sam Darnolds, the Baker Mayfields. But I love it when teams do this. I know you'll talk about this with the Bears. We talk about Justin Fields. I love when a team puts their young quarterback in a position to succeed. Hey, here's some weapons. Here's some offensive linemen. Here's everything that we can possibly give you to succeed. And if you don't, it's not on us. It's on you. So I want to believe. I think this whole offense takes a step. But, man, I feel very wishy-washy on Kenny Pickett. I'm super sorry.
No, I love that. He's an interesting guy because you do get the hardcore fans that are well into him despite his output. And obviously the market shows that. And you made some great points. The situation, it was great last season and it's got better, if anything. So you can paint a picture where it does make a step. Touchdown regression as well. He's incoming. I think he threw 7 in 10 games, something last season from memory. But yeah, I'm not a Pickett fan. My first article I did at DLF, it was comparing sort of Pickett and Russell Wilson, and I was on the Russell Wilson side of it. I think Pickett, he had a worse rookie season than Zach Wilson, so in a way better situation. So if he carries on that trajectory, he's done. But there is potential that he takes a step in a great situation, and you can cash out maybe even higher than QB 18 if he does maintain this sort of nose for the end zone as such. So yeah, Matt, QB 18, Kenny Pickett, what's your thoughts on the guy?
Well, I think Kev, you already know my thoughts on Kenny Pickett. I'm out on him. I'm done with him, to be honest. I think I was never really in on him, so it's hard to say that I'm out on him because I never got in. I think that the thing with Kenny Pickett is, like you mentioned, there's a lot of believers out there, and I think a lot of that boils down to the class that he was in. He was obviously selected in the first round in the class when he was drafted, but I think that's more of a knock on the actual quarterback class that year than it is an endorsement to Kenny Pickett. So I don't get why people use that as a glowing report of Kenny Pickett. And like we've mentioned, the situation that he's in terms of his weapons, this is a make or break year for Kenny Pickett. Like we've had in previous years, you mentioned Zach Wilson, Memphis mentioned Baker Mayfield. We've seen it time and time before with these quarterbacks that they have a solid rookie season, but they don't really do anything to wow us, and the pressure's really on him now to perform with the situation he's in, with the weapons, like Memphis mentioned, the off-season moves that the Steelers are making. They're putting it all on him now to say, right, this is your chance to show us what you are. We've invested some draft capital in you. We want to see what we've got in you. And if he doesn't perform, I'd be shocked if the Steelers don't look to other options, whether it be through free agency or the draft next year. I'd be shocked if they don't make that move. So for me, I can't buy into the price range that he's going at. I know he's got the age argument, but to be honest, when I'm taking a QB2, I just want someone that's reliable, really, especially if I've got a more risky, say, quarterback one, and I've got one of the guys that's not quite elite in terms of a QB1. I then want someone that's really safe from a QB2, and Kenny Pickett's got none of that, to be honest. He doesn't feel safe. The only argument is he's young, but this feels like it could be a contract year for him, basically. He's got to perform this year, or it could just be another quarterback that bounces around the league for years. So for me, I'm not willing to take that chance at where he's going at the moment.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with everything you've said. I also 100% agree with what Memphis said about Will Levis re-rolling. I would roll again and take Will Levis over Kenny Pickett, no doubt. So yeah, we're gonna move to the running back position now. A guy that I think was both pretty high on pre-draft, him coming into the league, but then I soured a little bit, and I think you liked him a little bit more, Matt, because he's quite good behind the camera and quite a funny guy on the sidelines. So over to you for running back.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a guy that's got a good personality. I think in terms of fantasy, I mean, we can't really knock him on that side of it either, because since he's came into the NFL, he's been productive. He obviously had the slow start to last year, but we know he was dealing with that foot injury. I believe he played so many games with a splint in his boot and didn't really get that taken out towards the end. But then towards the back end of the year, we actually saw little glimpses of the Najee from his rookie season. And even with the injury, to be honest, it didn't really stop the opportunities that he got. Over 270 carries last year, despite the fact he was playing on that injury. So Memphis, I know you've kind of already mentioned about the weapons, so I feel like you're quite in on these weapons with the Steelers. But what are you like with Najee Harris? Is a lot of his success just down to that volume? And if so, how concerned are you knowing that moving forward with Najee Harris, that could potentially drop off?
Well, several things on Najee. First of all, Player Profiler, they do their annual draft kit. And in the draft kit, they do little video snippets for like the top 100 players. This year, I was invited to take part in that kit, and everybody has to have my guy. Well, as luck would have it, Najee Harris just happens to be my guy. Najee Harris is a classic Memphis guy, and I hate talking about myself in the third person, but he is like Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs. Give me boring guys that just the space absolutely wants to kill. I don't know why. I mean, all he was the RB3 as a rookie, 300 fantasy points. Now, we don't like that. 74 catches, that's not any good. And then last year, to your point, got hurt in camp, allegedly played through a Liz Frank injury, which shuts down a lot of seasons. It didn't shut down a lot of seasons. You know, as a matter of fact, from the time he came back from his bye week was in week 9. So from week 10 through week 18, he was the RB7. To Matt's point, got a little bit healthier, took the plate out of his shoe. All of a sudden, oh, what do you know? Najee Harris looks like Najee Harris again. And then it's the weirdest thing. It's like, well, what about Jaylen Warren? I'm like, what about Jaylen Warren? The guy had 29% of the snaps last year to a running back that had a hurt foot. I mean, he literally played less than half of the snaps that Najee did all year. Oh, here's a trick question for you. Do you guys know how many running backs the Steelers brought in free agency this year? Any guesses? Drafted? That many. Zero.
Yeah,
so usually
I can't think of any.
0.0. Okay. This all says that Najee is set up for success in 2023. He is like Josh Jacobs, Alabama running back, boring, used way more in the passing game. He's got 115 career receptions. 115. So if I told you 2 years ago at the draft, when him and Travis Etienne came out at the draft, hey, one of these guys going into the 2023 season is going to have 115 career receptions, you'd have bet everything that you owned that it was going to be Travis Etienne. You'd have been stunned that it was Najee Harris. Yet here we are. And for some reason, we just don't like Najee Harris. I think Najee Harris is a steal. I did some research for this podcast because you are awesome gentlemen doing awesome work, and it would be shameful to come on and not be prepared. It boggles my mind that we have him as like the RB12, the RB11 in a dynasty startup. Yeah, I know he's a little older. He just turned 25, but he's a first-round pick. He's going into year 3 of his rookie contract. You know Pittsburgh's going to pick up his 5th-year option. It's very Pittsburgh. Now, will they re-sign him? I don't know, but I know I've got at least 2023, 2024, more than likely 2025, and he'll be age 25, 26, 27. That's peak running back efficiency. Can someone tell me what's not to like about Najee Harris? Because I can't find it. He's boring. He's fun behind the camera. You're right.
No, I think he's an interesting guy. The fact that he's shown, like you said, if you made that comparison 2 years ago that one guy was going to have 115 catches and it was one of those two guys, you would have said it's going to be ETN. So maybe both of those should be a little bit closer, even potentially flipped with the sort of target share ETN put out and the changing situation there. I think, my Jalen Warren shares are sad after you've broke it down that way and done the research from it there, but they're dart throws anyway. But I think at his price, I think it is really fair. You're going to be getting a nice value on him at that cost. He's someone that situation-wise, volume-wise, you can bank on, which you can't for 90% of running backs in Dynasty. So really think he's a safe option. Swing it back around to you, Matt, for the final word on Najee, the guy you like.
I think it's just echoing again what Memphis said. I think, as you mentioned, Kev, I've always been big on Najee Harris, whether it be for his fantasy production or the things he does behind the camera. But I do love Najee Harris, and it's funny that his ADP has obviously dropped a little bit from what it was last off season. Maybe that's because of the rough start, but we've laid out the reasons why he maybe didn't have a great start. He finished the year pretty much how he did the rookie season, and yet the Steelers are building that offensive line. They're building, like we mentioned at the top with Darnell Washington. He's a guy that's going to be used to protect the quarterback, but also to help out Najee Harris in the running game. So I absolutely love Najee Harris. I think he's in a great position this year. A lot of people were souring on him, thinking maybe he's not going to be what we hoped and saw from him as a rookie, but I actually think things are getting better now for him than even what he was as a rookie. So I'm super excited to see what he can do moving forward into the season.
Good stuff. And we're going to move on to wide receiver. This is a guy I'm really intrigued to hear about from Memphis because he's a sharp guy. And this is a player that's a little bit hate him or love him, I guess, in the sense that talent-wise, he's excellent coming out of college, a round 2 guy. But then rookie season wasn't great at looking at the bare numbers. Wide receiver 51 in fantasy points per game, but still only 22 years old. The market's got him wide receiver 31. So just want to know, George Pickens, is he an excellent buy low in the hopes of sort of a trajectory of a DK Metcalf light in his second year as a sophomore?
I don't think he's a buy low because if George Pickens is on a roster, his current GM probably really likes George Pickens because you are so spot on. He is very polarizing. You either love him or you hate him. Now, I was trying to do some research, and it just popped into my head as we were doing the show. I believe he tore his ACL late in his senior season at Georgia. Well, his last season at Georgia before he came out for the draft. And then he played last year. He's going to be another year removed from the knee injury. So if he builds on his, rookie, season of 800 receiving yards, it doesn't sound like a lot because that benchmark number is 1,000. I'm not going to be surprised. I'm not going to be stunned if we look up in this time next year and he had 1,000 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. He's a big guy. I've heard everybody from Matt Harmon, talk about his brutal against zone passing metrics, and we'll see how he does. He's not my cup of tea, but that doesn't mean that he can't succeed. I think he's the kind of guy that, and I think 95% of us play in leagues where we have to submit our lineup every week. When I'm putting George Pickens in there, I want to put him in my RB3 spot on a game where I'm projected to lose. I don't want to put in a safe option. I don't want to put in a guy that might get me a solid 12 points. He's going to get me that 6 for 60 in PPR. I would rather, in that case where I'm a big underdog, I would rather have a George Pickens because he could easily have that game where he goes 4 for 120 and 2 touchdowns. Very possible. He can win me a week in a game where I'm not projected to win that week. So that's how I see George Pickens. I understand why people love him. I will just say this. This is just a dynasty nugget in general. When you're like really torn between two prospects in your rookie drafts, I know a lot of rookie drafts are going on right now, always lean to the guy who went to the mega Power 5 conference, whether that's Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, because those guys were Debbie darlings. We have heard about those guys in articles and things. And it shouldn't matter. At the end of the day, can you score me fantasy points or you can't? In Dynasty, that's always going to be that little layer of insulation to help hold a little value. Yeah, we saw him do it at Georgia. We saw him do it in the SEC. We just couldn't help but do it. So I get why he's polarizing. He's, like I said, not for me unless it's in like a certain specific situation.
Love that. Yeah, it's a great breakdown of George Pickens. I think you've helped give some clarity on the situation. I think pre-draft, I was probably highest out of us three at Fantasy Wildcard on him, and then I think post-draft it flipped and it ended up being yourself, Matt. So where are you at on Pickens in Dynasty? Do you think it's obviously other than the QB, it's still quite an interesting situation for you?
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny that Memphis mentioned about a lot of Dynasty players look back to that college production and how they saw him as a prospect, because that's basically what I'm doing right now with George Pickens. It's like the rookie season wasn't anything that blew us out of the water. It was an average at best rookie season, to be honest, but still looking back to him as a prospect, how I viewed him as a prospect. You mentioned that you was high on him. I think we were both pretty high on him. You were slightly above me, but we still both had him really high, and we were both over consensus on him as well. So for me, it's still looking back to that, thinking, well, we've only had 1 year. It wasn't the greatest of years, but I'd rather back the talent that I think I know George Pickens has from his time in college with Georgia, and then banking on that developing as we move forward. Obviously, the big thing is that the quarterback play. I think that's going to be a big thing when talking about this guy, and obviously the other wide receiver with the Steelers that we're going to talk about in a second. I think that's going to play a huge part in how this develops moving forward. But for me, I'm willing to back the talent. And I think now he's become in that range in the ADP where it's where it should be. I think we hit a point where it got a little bit out of control. It was going around guys like Treylon Burks and those kind of players that got the round one draft capital and might have had a tough rookie season, but they've got that solid draft capital and that opportunity, whereas George Pickens doesn't. So I feel like he's now in that range where I think he's where he should be. And as I say, I'm willing to back the talent that I think he has, rather than maybe looking at his rookie season, which wasn't the greatest.
Indeed, and I'm not going to let you take too many breaths there, Matt. We're going to swing back to you for the other wide receiver who's going very similar range to George Pickens.
Yeah, and it's funny that we mentioned how I was high on George Pickens, because I absolutely loved Deontay Johnson as well before the selection of George Pickens. So I got two wide receivers that I absolutely loved on the same offense, but was sadly not blessed with a great quarterback. So it's been tough to be a fan of both of these guys. And obviously, we've seen from this past year, the thing that every single person on Twitter is going to bring this up, the fact that he got 0 touchdowns. I mean, it was insane to me that he didn't get any at all. But I'm actually viewing that as maybe not a negative. I'm viewing that as maybe a positive moving forward, because the fact that he had 0 touchdowns, but yet he was 7th in targets amongst wide receivers, showed that he's got that talent to attract the ball from the quarterback. He's getting open. He's making himself available to the quarterback. So if we can then get the touchdowns added back on, I mean, we're only a year removed from him being a breakout in the NFL and having that great fantasy season in 2021. So for me, I'm still backing the talent with Deontay Johnson and Memphis. I just want to know, do you think he's a bounce back candidate for 2023, given that the similar ADPs between him and George Pickens? Who do you prefer out of those as well?
Give me the guy who has averaged 150 targets the last 3 years. Big Ben, 150 targets. Kenny Pickett, 150 targets. I know that the no touchdowns are a bummer. Guys, George Pickens had 4. He didn't have 14. It wasn't like it was super one-sided. Kenny Pickett wasn't exactly, Tom Brady in that record-setting year where he's just chucking them left, right, and center, and they just left old Deontay out in the cold. I don't get it. I was looking at some Fantasy Pros, wide receiver rankings. They have him as the wide receiver 34. I see the rankings you guys have here as a wide receiver. That's criminal. Who do I call the police on? I'm going to be like a Karen. I'd like to call the police on the people that have Deontay Johnson that low. How in the hell can you have a wide receiver who's that young, who's averaged 150 targets a game for 3, not 1, not 2, 3 years in a row, and you have Jerry Jeudy ahead of him? That's against the law. Quentin Johnston never dropped an ounce of piss in the NFL ahead of him. Hollywood Brown with maybe Charlie Toon throwing him the football this year. You have all of those guys ahead of Deontay Johnson. It feels criminal. If there is a buy low, because I don't remember the exact details of his contract, but he's still super young. You know, what if he moves on? And the quarterback play's only getting better. So for me, this is the super buy low. Let everybody else argue about George Pickens, not George Pickens. Go out and try to get Deontay Johnson for wide receiver, barely wide receiver 3 prices, because he's 36, 34, depends on where you get your data. That is a steal. Anytime you can get a wide receiver averaging 150 targets a season, guys, that's almost 10 a game, about 9-ish for those that are really into the maths. You know, you're not going to find a lot of those guys, even in like the top 18 that are getting that much volume. So please, pretty please, give me Deontay Johnson's, and maybe the TDs come back.
Yeah, I think you've summed up perfect. I think in a vacuum, I'm taking Deontay Johnson over Pickens pretty convincingly. I think there is an argument in some scenarios where, based on team build, you might want to go upside of Pickens if you've got loads of safe guys beforehand, or you might want to go Johnson if you've got lots of risky guys you've taken ahead of him in your startups. But in a vacuum, I'm taking Deontay Johnson. We are now going to move to tight ends to Pat Freiermuth. Final question for the Steelers. I think looking at his career, really solid start, 60 catches both seasons, 2 top 13 tight end finishers. Still only 24 years old, so there's room for growth from an age perspective, but facing a lot of tight competition again. Concerns at QB. Just want to know, Memphis, on Pat Freiermuth, would you re-roll for a guy like Michael Mayer or Sam Laporta, or are you happy sticking with Postman Pat?
You know, those are great questions. Those are, I mean, because that's a nice little tier, kind of like the Lamar conversation we had about 55 minutes ago. That's a great tier. I do like the fact that, and you have it so kindly written in the show sheet, he's finished top 13. He's been basically a tight end 1 2 years in a row. And I mentioned Deontay Johnson and his 150 targets. That's true, but there's not a lot of target competition in Pittsburgh. And now that they've re-signed Zach Gentry, now that they've drafted Darnell Washington, I think you're going to, and I think this is really more for the NFL across the board. I think you're going to see more 12 personnel with 2 tight ends than you've seen. I heard rumors of it last year on some non-fantasy podcast, and the way that we're seeing teams drafting, you know, tight ends. The Green Bay drafted 2. For me, I'm still going to lean for Pat Freiermuth, but of the 2, I would go in this order. I would go Freiermuth by a lean over Michael Mayer, then the Sam Laporta. I think with Sam Laporta, there's too much target competition there. We know Amon-Ra is going to get his. We know that Marvin Jones is a professional. We know at some point Jamison Williams is going to get back. So and then we know they brought in Gibbs to be involved in the ball. I'm not saying that Michael Mayer is going to be Gronk, but I have seen a track record of what Josh McDaniels offenses can do. I didn't say will do. I'm not predicting the future. I'm looking at a historic past of what they could do with Michael Mayer, and look at his college dominator rating, how he dominated, and it wasn't like the opponents didn't know it was going to Mayer, and he still dominated in college. I'm gonna go Freiermuth, lean, Mayer second, then a pretty significant gap to Laporta.
Excellent stuff, Matt. What's your order of the 3 guys?
Yeah, again, I don't want to echo, but yeah, I think it's probably the same for me, and it's exactly as Memphis mentioned it. It's neck and neck between Freiermuth and Mayer for me, but it basically comes down to how risk averse are you in fantasy. Are you willing to roll the dice and take a chance on a guy that's yet to play in the NFL? But you're back in the talent that you've seen in college. I love what Michael Mayer did in college. He's been a Debbie Darling for years now. He's the tight end name that's been been mentioned for the last few years. So the fact we finally got him in the NFL now is something I'm really enticed by. I believe in him as a prospect, and he's actually landed in a pretty good situation. He's got decent draft capital with that second round pick. He's landed with the Raiders, who clearly have a need for a tight end over there, so he could fight instantly to be the starting tight end over there. So it's one of those where, do you take the chance on what you hope could be with Michael Mayer and the potential, or do you stick with what you've seen in Pat Freiermuth? So it's literally neck and neck. And for the sake of not repeating what Memphis says, I'm actually going to say I'm going to take Mayer over Freiermuth, but it is neck and neck. And then I'm sticking with what Memphis said, and Laporte is probably a tier down at least from those two guys.
Excellent stuff. So that brings us to the end of this part of the stream. The North is done as such. So it's also the end of our time with our amazing guest Memphis. So before you go, Memphis, please let the audience know where they can find you and what you're working on right now.
You can find me Sunday nights on the Player Profiler YouTube channel. That's our podcast. It's the Dynasty Warzone. You can still find that wherever you find podcasts. Just search Dynasty Warzone. And I'm not a big promote. Hey, if you like what I said today, search Dynasty Warzone. You can find me doing, or just search DWZ Memphis on Twitter. You'll find me. Big thing is these gentlemen are literally doing the Lord's work. Mental health awareness is so huge. And if you're not in a position to donate, cool. Retweet the podcast everywhere. Copy the link, put it on your Facebook. Maybe your grandma will see it. Put it on you can put it everywhere. Whatever we can do to draw attention to what these guys are doing, that's what's really important. So thank you guys for having me on. Thank you guys for bringing attention to what's a pretty significant charity and something I believe in as well. That's why I was excited to come on with y'all.
Perfect, Memphis. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, and it's been a great show. Thank you very much. Speak soon.
All right, lads. I'll talk to you guys soon. I'll have you guys. I don't know what time 9 p.m. Eastern is in the UK, but maybe get you guys out of bed early. Have you guys hop on the Dynasty Warzone with us this summer, and we'll talk some ball. But enjoy the rest of your podcast. I'll be tweeting it, and I'll be out there trying to support you guys.
No, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, take care, guys.
Take care, man.
Cheers. Bye. Yeah, so we're going to wrap up this stream. It's the end of stream 2. It's the end of the second quarter. So we're halfway there, as Bon Jovi said. Obviously, you can see the link to the Just Giving page along the bottom. You can go to our Twitter page, Fantasy Wildcard, as well, our pin tweet on there. So thank you for the donations so far. We're just approaching £1,000, so nearly at 2/3 of our target. Really great work from everyone involved, and really appreciate your donations so far. We're going to jump over to the next stream, so we'll see you in a couple of minutes' time. Thank you for your donations, and see you very soon.